Welcome to the Casablanca Insurance Meeting, a new format, a collective and innovative approach, an international scene. Welcome to a world of innovation and expertise around the insurance and reinsurance businesses.
Malgré toutes nos différences, il y a tellement de choses qui nous rapprochent. Comme la passion qui nous unit d'une même voix, ou quelques mots qui, sans parler, disent tout. Quand la confiance est là, compter ne compte plus. Mais quand la bienveillance est là, c'est tout ce qui compte. Un coup de main se manifeste en un coup d'œil, et peu importe le contretemps, il arrive toujours à temps. Parce que plus on se rapproche, plus la vie devient facile. Aujourd'hui, Atlanta et Sanad s'unissent pour que l'assurance soit plus simple et toujours plus proche de vous.
Atlanta Sanad Assurance, la vie nous rapproche. Parce que ce qui nous anime, ce qui nous transcende, ce qui nous fait porter la réassurance aux frontières du possible et au-delà, notre mission, notre vision, nos valeurs, c'est ce que l'on a de plus précieux, notre monde. Et si nous bâtissions ce monde uni pour un futur plus prospère, positif, radieux, responsable, généreux, altruiste, sûr, si nous marquions le monde de demain de notre empreinte, créateur de résilience depuis 1960, nous avons une vision, devenir la référence de la réassurance dans les marchés émergents. Depuis notre création, nous tirons vers le haut notre ambition pour répondre aux exigences de nos clients et partenaires au Maroc et à l'international. Leader de la réassurance au Maroc, nous marquons de notre empreinte l'économie nationale en jouant un rôle central dans l'écosystème de l'assurance et de la réassurance au niveau national et régional, et en étant une institution financière solide, bénéficiant d'un excellent rating. Opérant dans plus de 50 marchés avec plus de 300 clients, nous mettons en avant notre savoir-faire, notre expertise afin d'offrir à nos clients et partenaires la meilleure prestation. Nous visons à être inspirés et inspirants, à partager notre savoir-faire, à accompagner de par le monde à travers la fondation SCR Académie Ré, les idées qui viennent d'éclore vers le chemin des réalisations dont nous sommes si fiers. SCR, créateur de résilience depuis 1960. Bienvenue dans le rendez-vous de Casablanca de l'assurance. Un format inédit, une approche collective et innovante, une scène internationale. Bienvenue dans un univers d'innovation et d'expertise autour des métiers de l'assurance et de la réassurance.
Welcome to the Casablanca Insurance Meeting, a new format, a collective and innovative approach, an international scene. Welcome to a world of innovation and expertise around the insurance and reinsurance businesses.
Malgré toutes nos différences, il y a tellement de choses qui nous rapprochent. Comme la passion qui nous unit d'une même voix, ou quelques mots qui, sans parler, disent tout. Quand la confiance est là, compter ne compte plus. Mais quand la bienveillance est là, c'est tout ce qui compte. Un coup de main se manifeste en un coup d'œil. Et peu importe le contretemps, il arrive toujours à temps. Parce que plus on se rapproche, plus la vie devient facile. Aujourd'hui, Atlanta et Sanad s'unissent pour que l'assurance soit plus simple et toujours plus proche de vous.
Atlanta Sanad Assurance, la vie nous rapproche.
Parce que ce qui nous anime, ce qui nous transcende, ce qui nous fait porter la réassurance aux Français.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Ravi de vous retrouver dans le cadre de ces rendez-vous de Casablanca de l'assurance, où on se pose à l'échelle globale, mais aussi à l'échelle de chacun de nos pays, la question de l'inclusion dans les assurances. Je vais avoir le plaisir d'avoir notre premier keynote speaker aujourd'hui, Don Forgeron, qui est du Canada. Hello, Don. Very glad to have you here in Casablanca, even virtually.
Hello.
How are you doing?
We are well, thank you. How are you?
I'm very good. Where are you now?
I am in the province of Nova Scotia in Canada, on the east coast of Nova Scotia.
And how are things there?
Very nice. We are like the New Zealand of the pandemic. There's very little COVID in this part of the country.
Wonderful. So you are very lucky, and I hope that for all of us, things gonna be better in the very next future. Maybe we can have you here in Casablanca physically and have face-to-face discussion. Thank you anyway for joining us. I just want to ask you, because you have a very interesting experience in the state and public sector, but also with the private sector. And you have been observing what happened in the insurance industry at the global level. How do you see things? Because before the pandemic, I think the insurance industry was having some hard commercial situations.
It was very much in much of the world. We had very challenging times with respect to commercial insurance. And certainly the pandemic has not made that situation any better. In many parts of the world, it has made the situation much worse for not just the industry, but unfortunately for consumers as well. So the pandemic, along with bringing untold hardship to many in many different ways, it has also been a very difficult time for our industry with respect to commercial insurance.
How do you see the insurer's appetite and the ability to write business evolving before the pandemic and now?
Well, I think the ability to get a return on capital so that making the investment is worthwhile is not something that's unique to our industry. That's a fundamental for all sectors. And in different parts of the world, for different lines of business, especially with our changing climate, in a low interest rate environment, with regulatory interventions increasing in some parts of the world, that ability to make a return has been difficult. And so the degree to which and the speed with which companies will come back to certain sectors will be predicated on the ability to earn a return. And unfortunately for insurers, there's basically only two things they can do. They can leave the market and not write business anymore, in which case their ability to earn money is gone, or they can raise their prices. And we're seeing a bit of both in different markets around the world, companies leaving and then companies also raising their prices. And so at a point in time, those prices will reach a level where the ability to earn a decent return will be a reality again.
By observing what happens in the insurance industry at the global level, I think some stakes were very high before the pandemic for your industry to reinvent, in a way, some of or part of it. Do you think that some of that stakes are higher now? The industry has to face urgent issues.
Yeah, we are. I heard the industry described recently by a global regulator as being a shock absorber as opposed to a shock maker through all of this. There have been so many shocks to the global economy as a result of this pandemic. And our industry has played a stabilizing role. Claims continue to get paid. Swiss Re released their natural disaster insured losses yesterday, and another, I believe it was the fourth or fifth highest year on record. We continue to pay all those claims. I realize that business interruption is a point of contention in different parts of the world, but even some of those claims have been paid. So the industry has played and will continue to play a stabilizing influence. I think what's critical going forward for the industry is to work cooperatively with our elected officials, with our governments, and to work cooperatively with regulators to ensure that the industry can continue to do what it is that it does best, and governments can do what it continues to do best. So I think there's a need for even more cooperation as we go forward.
So if I understand, it means that public sector and private sector, state with insurance company have to work hand in hand to bring together maybe another way, some innovations to tackle the challenges that we all together face now.
Absolutely, more so than ever. We from my own experience here in Canada, we are working very closely with our governments on insurance for different sectors. So our small business sector has been very hard hit. Many of them have failed over the last year, and sadly, many more will. And some are having difficulty accessing insurance because of a very difficult market that we talked about just a few minutes ago. And so we've been working cooperatively with governments to try and come up with solutions so that insurance is available for these small businesses. And I know that our colleagues in Australia have recently embarked on a very similar effort to work with governments and stakeholders to determine what it is that the industry can do to help small business.
Yeah, thank you, Don, for joining to be live with us from Canada, the other parts of the world, and sharing your point of view about this very important issue, how the insurance industry is evolving. Let me talk with you about inclusivity.
De vous entretenir de l'inclusivité.
Do you hear me?
Est-ce que vous m'entendez?
I'm hearing somebody else too.
Okay, this is the translator who is. Yes, okay. I will ask the colleagues to do their job and to have translation only for people. We have to be more inclusive now. Insurance have to invent or maybe to improve some inclusive solution. You were talking about SMEs,
pour les rendre plus inclusifs. Vous
and
parliez de
maybe
PME.
very small companies, individuals that are not always accessible, they need to be included. What can you do now? How can you do collectively with states, obviously?
Well, and I think you've said the most important thing at the end of your question, which is with states. I do believe that we do need to work with our government partners, with other stakeholders, to become, as you say, far more inclusive than we have. Insurance plays such a fundamental role, such an important role in protecting people. We know that our climate has changed. We know that natural disasters are increasing. For many people in many countries, their home is their most important asset. And more so, these homes are becoming uninsurable. We're not able to provide affordable insurance. And so we have to continue to strive and look for ways that we can do that. Life insurance and pension planning, the private sector can play a very, very important role. And I know later today you have the CEO of the American Council of Life Insurers joining you, Janet. She will share a perspective on the incredibly important role that private pensions can play in helping our citizens plan for the future. And I know that Bashir in our Moroccan Federation has done great work in terms of trying to advance the cause of inclusivity on the African continent. And it's something that we need to do far, far more and far better than we have in the past.
Digitalization can play a role for that, and particularly in emerging and developing countries. We are in Morocco, we are considered as a hub for Africa. What do you think about it? How digitalization can help for better inclusion?
I think it's critical. I describe our industry sometimes as old and very old-fashioned. We do things.
If you say that, sir, I can accept it.
Yeah. And I think most young people would accept it as well. The polling that we've done with young people say, I can go online and I can buy a new car online and have it delivered to my driveway. I can have groceries delivered to my house. I can do all of these things online. But yet you want me to come into your office and you want me to take a pen and you want me to sign papers. It's old and it's very old-fashioned. And if we are to connect with the generations that are coming up, if we want to do business with them the way that they want to do business, we have to use technology. And I do think, to your question on inclusivity, I think that's one of the ways that we can improve the inclusiveness of our business is through technology.
And no barriers for that, even in developing countries. Do we have to see states and insurers working together for that?
Oh, I think there's no question. I'm not as familiar with some of the barriers as I'm sure people listening to this would be, say, on the African continent and elsewhere. But I know that the iPhone is becoming ubiquitous. Everybody has one, and increasingly, it's a great way for our industry to connect with consumers. But again, I think working cooperatively with governments and other groups, like-minded groups who also want to achieve the same end, I think is critically important to our success.
Let me maybe talk with you about one last issue, and I will let you conclude if you want, Mr. Don Forjon. The issue is the following. We're talking about how to be more inclusive, because the pandemic showed that we have a collective and global vulnerability. But at the same time, we need not to forget, you're mentioning that we live a very hard period with the climate change. And how can we work together to make people aware of that, to make states work, to make private sector be aware and work together as all stakeholders to prevent risks and to put human in the center and to be more human-centric?
Well, and again, you are ending your questions perfectly, because I think putting humans at the center is the answer to this. And so as humans when we look at the issue of climate change, there are two aspects. One is, how do we lower the level of carbon in the atmosphere? How do we move to a low carbon economy? Very difficult question. Many people much smarter than me struggling with how to answer that. And governments have been heavily focused on what we call mitigation. So how do we reduce the amount of carbon in the atmosphere? But as an insurance industry, we're seeing the impact of climate change today. We're seeing its impact on our people today with the payouts that we have for floods, for droughts, for wildfires, for hurricanes, for tropical storms. And we think that governments have to increasingly become focused on how do we adapt to what's already happened. Even if we turn the tap off tomorrow and we burn no more carbon,
on ouvre le robinet demain, il nous restera sur le bras un grand problème qui aura été créé. Et aussi, nous en faisons d'ailleurs l'expérience jour après jour. Les gouvernements doivent s'atteler davantage à l'adaptation, justement avec la réalité à laquelle nous sommes confrontés aujourd'hui. Et c'est justement.
That's where JAFIA has been focused in talking to regulators and governments around the world. How do we help people adapt and protect themselves today while also looking down the road and trying to reduce carbon in the atmosphere?
Don Fonjon, thank you very much. I will let you maybe have the opportunity to conclude with some other ideas you want to share with our attendees and our audience. Thank you very much for addressing such a complex situation and such complex issue, which is how the insurance industry can evolve for the future. I will let you, if you want to conclude, please.
Thank you very much. It's been a delight to be here. I've been in your beautiful country once before, and I was so looking forward to coming back again. Perhaps at some point in the future, that will be a possibility. Just quickly to end on a few of the priorities that JAFIA has as an organization, and the Moroccan Federation plays a key role. Bashir is on our executive and plays a very valuable role there. We're talking about the pandemic, of course, as the whole world is, the role that the industry can play. Cybersecurity, very, very important issue that is growing in importance. We are all working from home now. The cyber criminals know that, and so the risks are growing. A third priority is the aging population, and I talked about this earlier in terms of demographics, private pensions, saving for retirement. This is something that's very important to us. And we finished with climate change, something that is
avec les changements climatiques, quelque chose qui est très important pour l'industrie mondiale. Et c'est là quelque chose sur laquelle nous travaillons. Nous passons par des moments très difficiles dans notre histoire. J'espère que d'ici un avenir pas si loin, nous pourrions prendre du recul et nous serons revenus à une ère tout à fait normale. Et j'ai pu justement rencontrer des gens au Maroc et j'ai pu voir que nous jouons un rôle très important. Nous allons continuer à jouer ce rôle important. Nous allons continuer à travailler avec nos partenaires, le secteur privé et le public. Nous devons justement aider le monde entier à surmonter cette pandémie et justement à faire en sorte que nos économies puissent rebondir. Merci beaucoup de l'occasion qui m'a été donnée d'échanger avec vous. Merci Don Forgeron, merci beaucoup. Alors, puis-je rappeler que vous êtes le président de l'association d'assurance Canada et encore une fois, bien le meilleur à vous et bien très bonne journée. Merci de votre participation. We're going to now start our first panel which be dedicated to the inclusive insurance and what are the lessons, what would be the lessons to keep in mind. And for you, especially, I'm going to have 4 guest speakers. Thank you.
Inédit, une approche collective et innovante, une scène internationale. Bienvenue dans un univers d'innovation et d'expertise autour des métiers de l'assurance et de la réassurance.
Welcome to the Casablanca Insurance Meeting, a new format, a collective and innovative approach, an international scene. Welcome to a world of innovation and expertise around the insurance and reinsurance businesses.
Malgré toutes nos différences, il y a tellement de choses qui nous rapprochent. Comme la passion qui nous unit d'une même voix, ou quelques mots qui, sans parler, disent tout. Quand la confiance est là, compter ne compte plus. Mais quand la bienveillance est là, c'est tout ce qui compte. Un coup de main se manifeste en un coup d'œil. Et peu importe le contretemps, il arrive toujours à temps. Parce que plus on se rapproche, plus la vie devient facile. Aujourd'hui, Atlanta et Sanad s'unissent pour que l'assurance soit plus simple et toujours plus proche de vous.
Atlanta Sanad Assurance, la vie nous rapproche.
Parce que ce qui nous anime, ce qui nous transcende, ce qui nous fait porter la réassurance aux frontières du possible et au-delà, notre mission, notre vision, nos valeurs, c'est ce que l'on a de plus précieux, notre monde. Et si nous bâtissions ce monde uni pour un futur plus prospère, positif, radieux, responsable, généreux, altruiste, sûr, si nous marquions le monde de demain de notre empreinte, créateur de résilience depuis 1960, nous avons une vision, devenir la référence de la réassurance dans les marchés émergents. Depuis notre création, nous tirons vers le haut notre ambition pour répondre aux exigences de nos clients et partenaires au Maroc et à l'international. Leader de la réassurance au Maroc, nous marquons de notre empreinte l'économie nationale en jouant un rôle central dans l'écosystème de l'assurance et de la réassurance au niveau national et régional, et en étant une institution financière solide, bénéficiant d'un excellent rating. Opérant dans plus de 50 marchés avec plus de 300 clients, nous mettons en avant notre savoir-faire, notre expertise afin d'offrir à nos clients et partenaires la meilleure prestation. Nous visons à être inspirés et inspirants, à partager notre savoir-faire, à accompagner de par le monde à travers la fondation SCR Académie Ré, les idées qui viennent d'éclore vers le chemin des réalisations dont nous sommes si fiers. SCR, créateur de résilience depuis 1960. Bienvenue dans le rendez-vous de Casablanca de l'assurance. Un format inédit, une approche collective et innovante, une scène internationale. Bienvenue dans un univers d'innovation et d'expertise autour des métiers de l'assurance et de la réassurance.
Welcome to the Casablanca Insurance Meeting, a new format, a collective and innovative approach, an international scene. Welcome to a world of innovation and expertise around the insurance and reinsurance businesses.
Malgré toutes nos différences, il y a tellement de choses qui nous rapprochent. Comme la passion qui nous unit d'une même voix, ou quelques mots qui, sans parler, disent tout. Quand la confiance est là, compter ne compte plus. Mais quand la bienveillance est là, c'est tout ce qui compte. Un coup de main se manifeste en un coup d'œil. Et peu importe le contretemps, il arrive toujours à temps. Parce que plus on se rapproche, plus la vie devient facile. Aujourd'hui, Atlanta et Sanad s'unissent pour que l'assurance soit plus simple et toujours plus proche de vous.
Atlanta Sanad Assurance, la vie nous rapproche.
Parce que ce qui nous anime, ce qui nous transcende, ce qui nous fait porter la réassurance aux frontières du possible et au-delà, notre mission, notre vision, nos valeurs, c'est ce que l'on a de plus précieux, notre monde. Et si nous bâtissions ce monde uni pour un futur plus prospère, positif, radieux, responsable, généreux, altruiste, sûr, si nous marquions le monde de demain de notre empreinte, créateur de résilience depuis 1960, nous avons une vision, devenir la référence de la réassurance dans les marchés émergents. Depuis notre création, nous tirons vers le haut notre ambition pour répondre aux exigences de nos clients et partenaires au Maroc et à l'international. Leader de la réassurance au Maroc, nous marquons de notre empreinte l'économie nationale en jouant un rôle central dans l'écosystème de l'assurance et de la réassurance au niveau national et régional, et en étant une institution financière solide, bénéficiant d'un excellent rating. Opérant dans plus de 50 marchés avec plus de 300 clients, nous mettons en avant notre savoir-faire, notre expertise afin d'offrir à nos clients et partenaires la meilleure prestation. Nous visons à être assurance inclusive, les leçons à retenir.
C'est parti. Décompte.
Assurance inclusive, les leçons à retenir.
Assurance inclusive.
Inclusive insurance lessons to be learned. Thank you. Thank you for being with us and following us on this Casablanca Insurance Days. And obviously, we are now about to start a panel of 4 presentations on inclusive insurance. I would like to wish them a welcome. Mr. Richard Law, thank you, and welcome, and thank you for being with us. Can you hear me, sir? Dick Reinhardt, are you with us? Dick Reinhardt? Mr. Dick Reinhardt? And Mamiko Yokorai from OECD. I hope you can hear us. I don't know where you are based. I don't know where now you are based, madam. And where's the region you are based now? Where are you based now, Mamiko? Je suis à Paris. Ah, excellent. Bah, tellement proche de Casablanca, après tout, hein? d'avion. Mr. Driss Marawi, I think you are in the very heart of Casablanca in your offices. Well, good afternoon, Mr. Tommy. Good afternoon, each and everyone. Thank you for being with us. I will start with you, Mr. the President of Activa. I hope that you can hear me and the connection is good. You are, I'm going to say it my way, you are one of the most seasoned insurance-related expert in Africa with this dual hat, the boss of a multinational in your country, but quite obviously also you are the founding chair of Activa, a very important group which is Pan-African. Am I right in what I'm saying? You're right. You are very friendly, more than you understand only. You are very friendly. I'd like and welcome you and greet you. Where are you based in Cameroon, sir? I'm in Douala. I'm currently in Douala, Cameroon. Very nice city. I really like it. Well, the question of inclusion we're talking about today, because inclusive insurance, what lessons, what education can we draw? I'd like and pick your mind on this and the capacity to push the envelope, the classical envelope in your experience, in your group, and maybe start with you on an important topic, the very concept of education of population to insurance. What can you share with us in this regard, sir? Well, thank you. Thank you for your kind invitation. And once again, hats off for your organization and for showing the resilience, Morocco showing the resilience that allows us to, in part, distantly maintain this important rendezvous, the Casablanca Insurance Days. One or two things to really showcase the importance of this inclusive insurance. First, penetration rate-wise. We all know that the penetration rate of insurance on the continent, if we exclude South Africa and Mauritius, hovers around 6-7%. When we come back in the CIMA area where we operate, it is around 3%, and it's even lower rate if we think only of individual risks. Now, the first datum, the second datum is this low rate. Rightly so, about the populations in terms of individuals' risks will be more and more important because of the demographic pressure in Africa, which is highest over the last years, and this certainly is going to continue. Second, inclusive insurance. Talking about the inclusive insurance, mechanically we assimilate that, we liken that to the necessity to provide to low-income individuals the insurance services, even if the last recent events born out of the COVID has shown that even for companies and corporations, we may find ourselves in a situation where there's a lack of insurance. I think a speaker this morning was talking, be it cyber risk or also damage and loss of operation, talking about. But because of time being of the essence, I'm going to talk about the individual risks in terms of inclusive insurance. So these are persons, individuals who are virtually excluded from the very concept of insurance and towards which we have to go. So there is a dual challenge for the insurers. We ask ourselves the question as to whether this population with a low income is a population for which our activity may prove to be profitable. Second, do we have the statistical data in an adequate way in order to propose bespoke products that are tailored to the needs of that very important, which is going to be even more important target. The other side, the other challenge is the members of this population who do not know or not at all the insurance and who are going to ask themselves, is insurance going to help me in any way? We all know that insurance is this technique or process that makes it to mitigate, to alleviate the shock waves or the risks that we are suffering on an everyday basis. And in this respect, help fight in poverty. Education, you were talking about education, is very important. It is very important to be convinced and assured that a population who is not sensitive to the notion of insurance, who is going to be more important, a population that will be asking itself about the necessity to be insured, but also we need to really maintain that. We need to educate. We need to raise their awareness, not only by really selling them products. The education of people is first start with explaining the very notion, the very concept of insurance. What is it for? What does it help in terms of security and safety nets? So this is about selling the notion and how the insurance constitutes a lever and safety net. And even after sensitizing, it's only after sensitizing the population that we'll be able to design insurance policies that are meeting their needs. I would like to ask you the following question, sir, directly, since you're calling us on the topic. First, can we make bespoke products? You were talking a moment ago about the fact that the very concept or notion of inclusion relates mostly to the low or very low income walks of the population. But this morning we were also saying that maybe it is intended to persons who geographically cannot really understand the very concepts of insurance. Now, can we make any products? Can we offer products like that? And according to your experience, does it really call for a level of engineering which is specific to package up and to design products that are adapted to that need? Thank you for this question. Yes. We should not only address this kind of population or walk population in terms of product, but rather in terms of solutions to problems that we would have been able to identify as part of their activities. If you give me time, I'm going to give you an example. Well, insurance. In the field of insurance, for the last 4 years, we really are part of that approach. To give you, by way of example, 2 or 3, which we have launched in Activa. The first dates back in 2018. We launched Makala, as we called it, a product. It's a small individual occupational insurance or accidents insurance for the populations with very low income, those who are driving mopeds, taxis, persons who don't even have a car, and who are exposed to risks of accidents in their daily activities. We've designed it in partnership with a large telecom operator, which we called Makala. Why Makala? Because Makala is in Cameroon, which is a rice which is accessible to the most disadvantaged classes. And our actors and the market sold this at $1. Why $1? Because this price corresponds to one price of a beer. Cameroon is very famous, apart from sports and many other things, our capacity to be drinkers and to really appreciate the benefits and the joys of beer. So we tell them, for the price of one beer, you have the guarantee that this product gives you. First example. A second example that we have also launched in 2019 in partnership with IFC, International Financial Corporation, the private arm of the World Bank, is an approach, more than a product, an approach that allowed us to consider women as the strong link of decision-making in respect to insurance. We've designed these concepts which relates to women at all their levels of their activity, be it low-income women, those who go to a market, bayamsala, as we call it, open sky markets, to whom we proposed a product which is compatible to their activity and to their incomes. It's a small product of insurance, health insurance, individual health insurance, whose premium is $10 per month, which allows them to have access to a certain number of healthcare services, and also an individual accidents risk coverage, because in their merchants activities they can be exposed to such risks. And this is the first class. The intermediate class is the women entrepreneurs, and studies have shown that women in Africa are much more prone to entrepreneuring than men. And Cameroon is certainly set an example. Thank you, Tammy, for saying that. Yeah, and in this entrepreneurial spirit, of course, we have allowed women to work on the basis of a platform, and we've designed a process, a savings product that allowed these women, entrepreneur women, to make savings and thrift in the first place. And after that, we make them with an incubator of startups who would train them, guide them, support them, and during which time we also give them a legal assistance guarantee that we've put in place with one of our reinsurers. So much so that at the end of the savings and training process, these women entrepreneurs would be able to have made a thrift or a savings to allow them to have a bank credit that will allow them to start their activity. And the last example in the agricultural ag insurance. The ag insurance world in sub-Saharan Africa is totally outside of some examples like Senegal is not really penetrated by the insurance. And still with the IFC, our partner, we've decided since last year to initiate the ag insurance in Cameroon. We started with 500 cotton growers that we've put into cooperatives to whom we have talked about the climate risks to which their activity is exposed. And I can tell you that it's a long-term work, and we are bent on continuing that. So these are some examples of the product. Thank you. These are topics and subjects that showcase the inclusion and showcase the fact that when we help population through insurance to save, to have access to credit, so in a way we help them fly up their own wings and cause their activities to thrive. One very last question, if I may. Very brief, and I would like you please to really give me a brief answer. And at the end of the day, while offering such insurance or insurance like this, is it profitable? I can tell you that it is absolutely, for us, profitable. Some obstacles certainly need to be raised. One or two things. First is the importance of regulation. We need to see the regulator also support this movement by alleviating, unburdening the process microinsurance for telephony, digitalization insurance, the bank insurance activities. We have to really alleviate and unburden that. Our public powers must have an incentive tax policy. The insurance premiums, both individual disease insurance and health insurance, but also in agricultural risk, that must be unfiscalized, and there should be no taxes paid on it. It is the question of level of premiums. If it's full tax premiums, well, it means we have to remove the VAT on them. And also development bodies, we have to bring development bodies and development agencies to work with us on the ag insurance. How to design a system for a partial payment of such costs that are incurred by the growers who are also working in cash crops. And today, someone was talking about the climate risk this morning, but they are going to be more and more important, the climate. And the agricultural world is fully exposed to it. If we do nothing to allow the insurance to do and perform their insurance job, well, we'll be headed against the wall. Now, our public powers, our partners in development, it is absolutely a must. It is a long-term fight. Well, thank you very much. Well, we would keep in mind that it is preferable. We need to also involve the regulators, the state and international organization in order to see to it that this logic of inclusive insurance also contribute to the development. Remain with us, Mr. Richard Lowe, and I'm going to give the floor to Dick Renard. You are Vice President of the Munich Re. I would like to thank you. And why are you giving this very important to this question of inclusive insurance?
First of all, I would like to say that I'm extremely honored to be able to take part in this conference in Morocco, and I'm delighted and honored to be on a panel with such distinguished personalities. And unfortunately, the current COVID-19 crisis has prevented me from being in Morocco with you, but I hope that I will be able to travel to Morocco soon. So why is inclusive insurance important for Munich Re? Well, first of all, insurance plays an extremely important role for sustainable economic development. So obviously, when people start businesses, they take risks. And as such, this is why it's important. I mean, as such, insurance becomes unaffordable for SMEs and micro businesses, and so climate change has also come to exacerbate the risks for these businesses. And in Africa, for example, well, most people depend on agricultural income. And as it's already been mentioned, there are several barriers, such as the availability of insurance solutions. Not many insurers, in fact, can develop products for low-income populations. What is necessary is to conduct studies and conduct research on the markets, and it's important to show that there is an interesting market for the insurance business. This segment can indeed be profitable. It is true that is not always the case, especially if we talk about climate risks. So it's important to show that this is a business case for insurers. It's important for there to be trust in the insurance business. Products do need to be created that prove that there is an added value for customers. And the reason why we believe this is important for the foundation is that we believe that all partners need to contribute to the development to the development of the market, and these include governments, insurers, actuarial scientists, and we need to create a synergy amongst all of us to find sustainable products. So you were mentioning that this is a business case for insurers, and so clearly this is a complex business case. Yes, it is a complex business case, but there are very profitable examples. Some are indeed a little more complex. For example, agricultural insurance, health insurance, and for these segments, governments need to work with insurance companies to find solutions. So what are the main obstacles that we need to overcome in these situations? So I had already mentioned a few examples, or mentioned the fact that there's an issue with regarding the lack of data, namely data on climate-related data. So today there is an issue. There's a regulatory issue as well. And so the regulatory framework is not very clear in certain markets. And sometimes insurance companies need to reach out to the telecommunications regulator, to the central bank, the insurance regulator, and especially when it comes to digital products. Here, the regulators aren't responsive enough to develop and to create an environment that is conducive to new products and that can spearhead innovation. So I was just a few moments ago, I was interviewing our colleague from Canada, the president of the Global Federation of Insurance Associations, and he was saying that you are right, the insurance companies are sort of are maybe a little slow to move forward and lack flexibility. So could you give us some insight on what you think is necessary to develop inclusive insurance? So I believe what's necessary, in fact, we do have examples such as the Philippines, where we developed a national strategy for the development of the insurance market. And so this strategy focuses on an interaction and collaboration between the government and insurance companies. And as such, it is extremely important to have a strategy that involves all stakeholders. And it's important to show patience. I mean, obviously, the insurance market will not develop overnight. It will take a couple of years, all the way up to 5 years. So as such, it's extremely important to have a national strategy. So thank you very much. I will jump over to our third speaker, Mamiko Yukoi. All right, thank you for being here.
Yes, you are representative from ECD. Maybe my first question is, how does penetration levels of insurance remain low in most markets, despite all the efforts from various given by various organizations worldwide?
Yes, I think low.
Oui, je pense que les pénétrations faibles sont un problème en termes d'assurance, étant donné que nous avons remarqué effectivement que les personnes qui ont accès à l'assurance est limité. Et je pense que c'est dû à un manque de sensibilisation et de communication. J'ai évoqué cette question profondément avec les personnes et les collègues qui travaillent dans les finances sur comment communiquer sur la couverture politique, etc. Et sa réponse est probablement...
The policy language in itself doesn't really lend itself too well to being translated into sort of a communication document that improves from what there is already being provided. So therefore, then the question becomes, well, if you don't have enough penetration, the risk pooling, which is the foundation of insurance, you cannot be assured, because then you have a vicious cycle in which the affordability of the product is also compromised. So it is really a critical issue. And I think a lot of people are working on it. And not that I have any really answers to it, unfortunately, but I think it is an issue that we need to continue to work on, because without better penetration and better understanding of the benefits of insurance, I don't think the sort of benefits of insurance will really be conveyed as widely to the economy and society as I think us as people who work, experts who work in the insurance sector really hope for. So that's one of the things that I am critically concerned of, in particular for small and medium-sized enterprises and retail policyholders.
But we know that the impact is always positive for that.
Well, I don't know if there is a better penetration, of course, I think the impact will be positive. Now, maybe I'll just turn to some of the ways in which penetration could be improved.
Yes, I want to talk with you about how we can increase that penetration. And the main issue is access. How digitalization can play a role to help a better access to insurance, but not only to insurance in a classical way. We have heard from Mr. Lowe about that, but also all the services that are associated to that.
Yes, yes. So this is, I think, with the big data and artificial intelligence, the possibility of better data analytics is really bringing a lot of benefits to, underwriting practices. So this is one aspect. But obviously, I think for retail policyholders, the real benefit is having, for example, personal devices and easier access, and also being able to tailor your product so that it's more matched to you. This could be in terms of the coverage that is provided, the terms. I think there are various, and there are now a lot of innovative products that are being offered, in particular in emerging markets. And I know that there's a couple of startups that are operating in the African continent in particular that have been really successful in, for example, providing health insurance. And this would really be a big benefit because, for example, hospitalization costs can really incur a sudden and unexpected expense to households. And so this sort of flexibility, because obviously I think one of the ultimate sort of hopes you have in terms of having big data and AI is to obviously decrease the transaction cost of insurance and therefore bringing down the price of insurance. And so this is another important consideration, I think. I mean, unfortunately, there are downsides to having more big data. For example, if big data or just data in general, there's more granular data, I think this could lead to particular communities being excluded. I think the best known example is actually postcodes, for example. So particular postcodes could be excluded as a result of the more granular data that is available. and this could result in exclusion, in fact. And so these could be troubling sort of situations as a result of digitalization. So I think it is important to try and balance the real opportunities that are being presented to really offer more sort of selection in terms of the product lines, but also really looking at the risks that might be presented as well. And then I guess the regulator should also think of a response that corresponds to that, not going over the board, but really sort of trying to attract more innovation, I think, in the sector.
Mrs. Mamiko, Yoko, I were talking about digitalization and how it can give better access to insurance solutions, if I may use that word. But how can this data and parametric insurance provide greater opportunities at the retail level as well?
Yeah, so parametric insurance has been used, I think, in particular in the agriculture insurance sector. And I think, so for example, also the Caribbean regional insurance, they also use a parametric approach for catastrophic risks. And this has really provided a lot of dividends. Obviously, this is opposed to the indemnity-based approach of insurance, which will basically try to cover the losses as much as possible based on the coverage levels. But parametric insurance has a lot of benefits in terms of how insurance is expected to respond, in terms of being quick, being very clear in the triggers that actually sort of induce the payments. And I think there will be much more interest in trying to provide parametric insurance in a retail context or a more SME context. I think the key example that, I mean, in the OECD and some of the countries that we've been sort of having discussions, policy discussions around, has been the business interruption related to pandemic risk, because a lot of small businesses have been, they have a property insurance coverage, but business interruption doesn't cover non-physical damage. And so a lot of the solutions that are coming up, I mean, obviously there's an element of a public and private partnership element, but in addition to that, there is a lot of parametric insurance because pandemic risk in itself is considered to be not possible to insure by the private insurance of it in itself.
Thank you very much. You are Mamiko Yoko, Principal Administrator and Head of Insurance. Thank you. Please stay with us. Maybe we're going to have some, maybe one or two questions from the attendees to this conference for all of you. Driss Bradawi, merci de votre patience et merci de venir.
Driss Bradawi, thank you for your patience. You are General Delegate Manager of WAFA Assurance. So I guess you know the digital world and the insurance world. I like to be very forefront and ask you the question, the micro insurance in Morocco and the framework of financial inclusion. We spoke about it this morning. Do you want to share your experience? Where are we at this point? Thank you very much, Mr. Hofi, for this very interesting introduction. I also want to thank the wholeheartedly the Federation of Moroccan Insurance and Reinsurance for inviting me to this forum and webinar. So I wish to share with you the experience of the WAFA insurance group in the microinsurance. So what we talk about microinsurance or inclusive insurance has been going on for some time within our group. For 2013, it was not born just overnight, but more importantly, with the arrival of the National Strategy of Insurance Inclusion, we kind of became fond and keen of the project, and we paved the way for a much more aggressive strategy. If I may, I'd like to share with you the purpose of doing that. Why did we do it, and what is our strategy, and what are our ambitions? In terms of strategy, the microinsurance is a very important brick. It's important at all other bricks. In other words, micro savings does need microcredit. Microcredit needs and does need micro savings. So both need microinsurance. They need money transfer and money wires, and all this is a building block and a consistent whole and complete blocks where all the bricks will fit in. and be intertwined. So I'm not going to dwell on the details, but I'd like to highlight the fact that way beyond the fact that the microinsurer does nourish other breaks, but in general, as a self-entrepreneur, for him to take more risks and for him to invest more, he does need microinsurance. In this regard, we can consider that microinsurance can be a real booster, a scaler up, an engine to really encourage self-entrepreneurs to take more risk, and in other words, to develop their business at the benefit of their family and the development of their countries. So within Wafa Answer Insurance, we have a very strong ambition here. We want to become leader in this field. We want to be a locomotive and a major player, and the experience has showed it. As I said earlier, we've had in the past, and we've have so far, almost 400,000 Moroccans covered. And what I mean 400,000 Moroccans, I mean families that really embrace the microinsurance as we have described it before. Could you please repeat the figure, please? 400,000 families. And our ambition is to reach up to 1 million by 2023. And in order to achieve this figure, we're going to trigger a series of leverages and engines that I will talk about very happily. So, well, by the way, what are the locomotives and what are the success factors and key factors to succeed in this universe? Well, you asked a question on the products, and my apologies if I'm going to speak more about the products and solutions. But you're absolutely right. And the speaker before is absolutely right when he spoke about solutions. So microfinance is not, I'm not going to talk the downsizing and the very fact of copy pasting the classical incumbent and traditional insurance simply by dropping the prices. That is not about micro insurance. Microinsurance is about a philosophy, a mindset, a state of mind, a new concept that is totally different. Let me start with the offer, if I may. The offer, as we well know it in the classical insurance systems, is distributed through brokers and classical brokers and agents, but also by the bank insurance. But in order for a solution of micro solution to really reach out to the final and end customer and the insured, it has to be very simple and down to earth for two main reasons. Why? Because first, distributors are not specialists of the insurance. So in order to convey the message to the end customer, the solution needs to be extremely simple and very understandable and down to earth. But let us not forget that this population group is not knowledgeable about these products, insurance products. These are common people that really need to understand and gain understanding of those offers and products. This is why the offer has to be extremely simple and easy to understand. And by the way, the solutions that we market, namely OPSEC in insurance products, these are mainly products that the customer can buy over the counter with expiry date, immediate expiry date, without having to bring any justification or paperwork or whatever he would need on his own medical records. In other words, this is extremely simple to underwrite, but also extremely simple in terms of compensation, because we're only request from him one single paper, and payment can be done over the national territory and from any corner of the country. So as you see, there are ingredients of simplicity and down to earth and downsizing that is part of the philosophy that I spoke about earlier. Last question, and I'll ask you for a very brief question. I have one question from the public that I would like to share with you, please. So Wafa Insurance is a company that is present in other countries of the continent with a great business appetite and a real strategy. Does it compel you to be in the forefront of innovation, at a cutting edge of innovation? So is this insurance inclusion right enshrined in your DNA, as you spoke before? So how do you do that? Well, as I said before, this is a very strong strategy that we started and kicked off in the Moroccan territory that we are also implementing in all other countries where we are present. Of course, the implementation we're going to be doing it with local competences and skills and knowledge and know-how. And the contribution of Wafa Insurance Maroc or Morocco will be on the know-how transfer. So kind of adapting to the local demand and regulation combined to the experience of Wafa Assurance Maroc that will allow us, and I may just make an announcement, last week we have launched in Tunisia through our subsidiary, very much the same concept, and that we are also paving the way to implement these schemes in Côte d'Ivoire, in Cameroon, in Senegal, and anytime soon in Tunisia in a couple of months, hopefully. So we do have a very strong ambition to move forward, a continental ambition, I would say, in all present in countries where we have broken in. So this is exactly what you said. So all the players, states, private sector, insurance companies, financial institutions, they all need to get together to provide with new customers and new products. So a last question, when we do innovation and we create inclusive innovation, do we actually take the risk to kind of overshadow products or cannibalize products that you already have in your basket of products? Well, actually, we're not taking risks because in the marketplace, there is room for all solutions. But let's say it very bluntly and honestly, these populations have not access at all to any product. And this is at the benefit of our national strategy, of our country. And this is something that we are very strongly committed in and engaged in. Thank you very much to the four of you for this incredible contribution to this first panel. Thank you so very much to all of you for this insightful comments. Let's meet in 5 minutes for the second panel. See you in a minute. In 5 minutes, rather. Thank you.
Un format inédit, une approche collective et innovante, une scène internationale. Bienvenue dans un univers d'innovation et d'expertise autour des métiers de l'assurance et de la réassurance.
Welcome to the Casablanca Insurance Meeting, a new format, a collective and innovative approach, an international scene. Welcome to a world of innovation and expertise around the insurance and reinsurance businesses.
Malgré toutes nos différences, il y a tellement de choses qui nous rapprochent. Comme la passion qui nous unit d'une même voix, ou quelques mots qui, sans parler, disent tout. Quand la confiance est là, compter ne compte plus. Mais quand la bienveillance est là, c'est tout ce qui compte. Un coup de main se manifeste en un coup d'œil. Et peu importe le contretemps, il arrive toujours à temps. Parce que plus on se rapproche, plus la vie devient facile. Aujourd'hui, Atlanta et Sanad s'unissent pour que l'assurance soit plus simple et toujours plus proche de vous.
Atlanta Sanad Assurance, la vie nous rapproche.
Parce que ce qui nous anime, ce qui nous transcende, ce qui nous fait porter la réassurance aux frontières du possible et au-delà, notre mission, notre vision, nos valeurs, C'est ce que l'on a de plus précieux, notre monde. Et si nous bâtissions ce monde uni pour un futur plus prospère, positif, radieux, responsable, généreux, altruiste, sûr, si nous marquions le monde de demain de notre empreinte, créateur de résilience depuis 1960, nous avons une vision, devenir la référence de la réassurance dans les marchés émergents. Depuis notre création, nous tirons vers le haut notre ambition pour répondre aux exigences de nos clients et partenaires au Maroc et à l'international. Leader de la réassurance au Maroc, nous marquons de notre empreinte l'économie nationale en jouant un rôle central dans l'écosystème de l'assurance et de la réassurance au niveau national et régional, et en étant une institution financière solide, bénéficiant d'un excellent rating. Opérant dans plus de 50 marchés avec plus de 300 clients, nous mettons en avant notre savoir-faire, notre expertise afin d'offrir à nos clients et partenaires la meilleure prestation. Nous visons à être inspirés et inspirants, à partager notre savoir-faire, à accompagner de par le monde à travers la fondation SCR Académie Ré, les idées qui viennent d'éclore vers le chemin des réalisations dont nous sommes si fiers. SCR, créateur de résilience depuis 1960. Bienvenue dans le rendez-vous de Casablanca de l'assurance. Un format inédit, une approche collective et innovante, une scène internationale. Bienvenue dans un univers d'innovation et d'expertise autour des métiers de l'assurance et de la réassurance.
Welcome to the Casablanca Insurance Meeting, a new format, a collective and innovative approach, an international scene. Welcome to a world of innovation and expertise around the insurance and reinsurance businesses.
Malgré toutes nos différences, il y a tellement de choses qui nous rapprochent. Comme la passion qui nous unit d'une même voix, ou quelques mots qui, sans parler, disent tout. Quand la confiance est là, compter ne compte plus. Mais quand la bienveillance est là, c'est tout ce qui compte. Un coup de main se manifeste en un coup d'œil, et peu importe le contretemps, il arrive toujours à temps. Parce que plus on se rapproche, plus la vie devient facile. Aujourd'hui, Atlanta et Sanad s'unissent pour que l'assurance soit plus simple et toujours plus proche de vous.
Atlanta Sanad Assurance, la vie nous rapproche.
Comment l'innovation rend l'assurance plus inclusive. L'innovation rend l'assurance plus inclusive.
Alors, comment on rend qu'on l'innovation?
Going to resume, and Don Fergeron said that a moment ago. Here in Casablanca and the world over, innovation also goes through the capacity of a certain number of persons to see and seize opportunity through the creation of startup. And by bringing innovation, we have focused on a young startupper who imagines that we can, who thinks that we could use AI tools, and he's Tarek Dadi in Contev. Contev. Contev improves the quality of data, bring actions and recommendations to operational teams. I worked for many years in a large international insurance group. My assignment in this group is to help the entities the world over to transfer, to do their data transfer and setting up softwares using AI to improve their operational excellence and decrease the expenditures. This is how I discovered that the majority of teams in charge of health insurers the world over was based on an Excel spreadsheet to make very costly and complex decisions. Health insurers who have adopted our solution have seen a sizable operation ratio and operational excellence with a reduction of 5% of all of the uncollectibles, a 20% increase of the salary of targeted works, an improvement of customer satisfaction of 25 plus, measured by the ENPS cycle. Now, our ambition today is to continue helping the world over health insurers to improve their operational excellence by giving them a 360 vision of the performance of their service providers. Support these members in their health pathway and in the implementation of prevention actions, and this through a very fine dynamic of its health portfolio or health customers portfolio. In 2041, the insurance will be connected, but much more human and much closer to the needs. The insurers, the digitalization will allow the insurance companies to improve customer experience and to instill customers' experience. In 2041, the insurance will be an intrinsic partner, helping them to solve the risks and to overcome the risks life brings. Now, how does innovation make insurance more inclusive? One of the solutions is to allow young personalities, just like this young entrepreneur, come with somewhat different solutions. We're going to talk about this with different speakers in this panel. I would like and thank them. Antoine Denoy, Director General of AXA Climate in France. Damien Guerrou, you are Director General of BIMA in Malaysia. We're going to together discover what BIMA is. Mohamed Abdul Dassouli, the Deputy General Manager of MAMDA MCMA, which is the ag insurance partner and actor in Morocco, and Sinap Gulojal, you're main specialist in the financial sector in the World Bank. Merci, Madame Gulojal, de nous avoir rejoints, et je suis vraiment heureux de voir que vous avez le lien et que vous êtes avec nous et que l'on pourra également avoir un certain nombre d'idées de votre part. I'd like Antoine Denoy give you the floor. I only want to say simply, what are you doing in the insurance world? It's not your universe. Are you the person who brings innovation through an extremely rich Google pathway in a marketing partnership, digital at AXA, but you're also an author. And I have to really read it of a book, Big Data, Smart Data, Stupid Data. The part stupid data is of interest for me because we have a lot of persons who are really taking data too naturally. Can we reinvent the world of insurance? My question to you, and more particularly to foster and promote access to those who do not have access. Well, thank you very much. I hope you can hear me perfectly well. Very good. Thank you. Insurance is everyone's business. It is not the appanage of some person. Well, jokes apart, access climate, if heard well, is this idea of reinventing insurance. AXA Climate is an entity that I launched about 3 years ago with 80 collaborators, with the idea being to cross the different steps of assistance, insurance, investment of the value chain with a focus on climate, saying that we need to reinvent our products and offers and the way we distribute them in the market. Concretely, it goes through the innovation. What innovation? Pertaining to insurance and the parametric insurance. This is quite a simple idea whereby tomorrow more products, insurance products, are going to trigger payments in a couple of hours, couple of minutes in an automatic manner on the basis of climatic and meteo indices. For example, the speed or the height of water seen from above, or the wind velocity for tornado, but not stupid data, very smart and useful data that originate from and hail from the satellite in the sky. With satellites today, with a very fine resolution, allowing us to trigger payments for populations of farmers or private companies in a nomadic manner. I may elaborate on that, just an illustration, because we have just close to you, one of the bosses of MAMDA, which is the Agricultural Mutuals Association. Certainly he's leaning a keen ear to what you're saying. Can we take the example of agriculture to see how can this have, what are the implications that this can have in the ag business? It's a very good illustration. MAMDA, I know, work a lot, so I keep my humility only to say that AXA Climate, we are accompanying about 10 or so countries in the protection of their farmers through the dryness index, which makes it possible to detect at a resolution of a couple of meters the humidity of the soil. And also good is that we do not only contain ourselves, say, in humidity, we also integrate the vulnerability of the grains, of cereals, of the crops. This is why in my teams, I don't only have startuppers and tech profiled, but also climatologists who are establishing a nexus between the agronomy and the climate to trigger the payment at the adequate time. So we do have this dryness coverage or hedge in about 10 countries that allow governments, cooperatives to receive a maximum quantity as early as possible, a certain number of compensation, and the cooperative or the local insurer must earmark or to give it to the farmers who have suffered the brunt or have borne the brunt of it. Is it going much more than the management of data, the trigger, in other words, of payment? Can it go the extra mile? Can it also reach the trade line itself or the business proper? Now, the beauty of the parametric is that it also includes many other things for insurance. The first important component is that we today, through satellites and through drones, be able to capture the claim. When there is an extreme climate event, we can send drones and better understand the disaster, the catastrophe, in order not to pay there and then, but convince the insurers that there have been a damage and trigger a first amount or a first installment. And after that, of course, the assessments, the appraisals can take place, and the insurer can cash out the entire amount. So there is a structure of insurance to transform classical damage insurance that we know well on the market. And the last point, also important point, is AXA Climate is not only parametric insurance. It is simple, to use the satellite to also offer other services to our customers. In my team, I have a 24H, 7 days a week team over or monitoring the weather, monitoring day and night the weather and who would call on and even awaken customers when we need to act. Now, these data, these information, these tools, do they lead you or cause you to help to contribute to the deployment, rollout of equipment, and agricultural adaptation according to the situation? Does it make it possible to better preserve production, etc., etc.? Can it provide other services? Yes, two quick illustrations. The first is that today we can model and anticipate the crop. 2 months before the crop yield of wheat, we have a very reliable forecast of collection or the crop, which makes it possible to better establish the collection at the silos, at the wheat houses, which makes the modeling of the yield better. So drip irrigation is the second example. You know quite well the drip irrigation in Morocco, because there are very few equipment that improve the ecological print and the yield, both difficult, and the drip irrigation does so. We are working to have bundles between the climate insurance I've talked about and these equipment that are very costly and hefty when you have to buy them, and we want to go into a subscription mode to these equipment, and us, AXA Climate, we secure the payment by the farmer or the cooperators of these monthly payments. And if there is a drought that really causes problems in the crop, we can act instead of the farmer or the cooperative to pay that. And these are two perfectly illustrating examples. Please stay with us. I may need you to answer some of the public's questions. I receive the questions as we go. And if time allows, and I hope I will have the panelists to react to this topic. Thank you, Damien. You are Director General of BIMA in Malaysia. And can I ask you a personal question? Where are you based now?
So I'm currently in Malaysia, in KL. So it's probably very late at night, all the way in Malaysia. So thank you very much for being here with us and to share your contribution at the Casablanca insurance meeting. So reading your bio, I mean, it's very interesting. It's not only interesting, but impressive. Could we maybe ask you what has led you to creating BIMA and making this notion of inclusive insurance your bread and butter? So yes, so thank you very much for inviting me to the Casablanca insurance meeting. So I'm not the founder of BIMA. I came along, I joined ship along the way. So indeed, inclusive insurance is the core business of BIMA, which in fact was born in Ghana in 2010. Based on the observation that in Ghana and most sub-Saharan African countries, the insurance penetration rate was extremely low for in most cases under 10%, and conversely, the access to mobile was extremely high, at reaching 90%. 90% penetration rates for low-income populations. So BIMA realized that the phone operators and telecom operators, that there was a synergy that was possible between the insurance companies and telecom operators could create a synergy to be able to leverage their platforms for the collection of insurance premiums, and with the conventional insurers to be able to benefit from their risk management side. And so we proposed in turn. So in fact, the idea was to be able to target people that were illiterate and that were mobile, that were equipped with mobile technology. So generally, our insurance premiums cost less than 50 cents per month, and that are deducted from the mobile phone invoice. So in turn are very easy for the customers to pay. So easy relationship, easy to use. And this is all obviously paperless, and this is all digital with an e-signature. So in addition to technical innovation for the use of mobile, as you just mentioned, have there been any innovations in the products themselves? So you were mentioning a product that costs 50 cents. So Did you have to introduce a financial education classes or programs, and also obviously to ensure profitability regarding the risks that you were insuring? So what was interesting was that the first innovation was to be as simple as possible, given the targeted population. So interpreters have lost the sound. So as I mentioned, was to create extremely simple products. And then there were maybe a little more sophisticated products that came about. And then there was also the diversification to telemedicine. So through our servicing of our customers, we realized that before, for example, for health insurance, we realized that before the customers got to the hospital in the event of a health concern, well, we realized that there was sometimes a delay in reaching the hospital, and which could have a serious health repercussions, and so which triggered us to launch these telemedicine services, and this was a very innovative product, in fact. So Dalia Algehu, so you're telling us that the story in very simple terms, but what you seem to be telling us, in fact, is that there's an issue of access to hospitals, access to physicians, and you are providing a solution through telemedicine. So could you just tell us about maybe one of the countries that you're established in, maybe Ghana or Malaysia, the number of consultations? So how important is this phenomenon? So in Ghana, we were the first actors in telemedicine. It's true that this is something that we've been talking about more and more since 2020 with COVID. So in Ghana, we have 70 physicians and we have about 10,000 consultations per month. And so we have this type of scale in several other countries, namely Bangladesh. And so globally, it's 90,000 consultations per month. Do your customers realize the added value that you provide to them? I think the first judges are the users. We have very interesting use rates, which shows that that our customers do see the benefit of the services we provide. We also support our customers long-term for all types of chronic illnesses such as diabetes. And we do realize that for insurance products wherein there isn't necessarily an immediate benefit, or for example, that we only benefit from in the event of an adverse event, the advantage of telemedicine is we can have practically daily engagements with our customers, and these are in a way positive engagements because we help them to remain in good health. So as you mentioned, this is extremely interesting, and so being innovative is to be able to create simple products. And so in the countries that you're established in, so Africa, which is in fact my continent that I'm familiar with, it so happens that societies are changing too. There are shifts in these societies, there are different middle classes, and so no need to delve into the figures on middle classes. So there are some societal trends that are operating. So how do you manage to remain anchored by trying to interpret the different needs, market needs, and to meeting these needs? This is indeed a complexity, because if we were to take a look at a market like Ghana, we have people, different types of socioeconomic groups that use the same product. For example, we have maybe financially literate or illiterate people that use certain types of products, and other, for example, more educated young people that use these same products. So I think the most important thing is to ensure digital coverage, and what we try to do is that all of these services are available to everyone. So we have customer journeys that are inclusive, in the sense that when we sign on the insurance policy, we make sure that the customer has a smartphone, and on this basis, the customer journey will be different. So based on the type of device that the customer has, they'll be redirected to WhatsApp and whatnot. And for the rest, or those that are, for example, those that are illiterate, will redirect them to audio, voice notes, for example. So I have a question I'd like to ask you regarding telemedicine. So the question that comes to mind, so what about the prices, and how do customers pay for the consultations? So in Africa, the main form of payment is mobile money, and so we are on an underwriting basis or registration basis. So it's not necessarily on the basis of a consultation. So if you are a customer and you pay for your premium on a monthly basis, well, you have access to the insurance coverage and you also have access to the telemedicine service. And to just give you an idea, after 6 claims, so which represents about €1 per month, you have an unlimited access to the telemedicine services and to the insurance coverage. So Daniel Gehu, I'd like to ask you a question. So if I understood correctly, you have different products, including family products for telemedicine? Yes, indeed. So it's also a form of innovation that we had to introduce. We realized that we had a lot of customers that truly wanted inclusive products where allowing for the entire family to be covered, and these are not necessarily products that were available on the market. It's true that some insurance policies made it possible to add relatives, provided for discounts. But here, what we tried to do was to make things as simple as possible and provide inclusive packages to provide, for example, insurance to your spouse, children, parents, or in-laws. Thank you. So I will hop over to your neighbor, your neighbor on screen and not geographically, because we're jumping over from Kuala Lumpur to Rabat. So I'd like to give you the floor, Mr. Abdou Dessoudi, you are the Director General of MAMDA MCMA. So if we could summarize what the MAMDA MCMA is in a nutshell for those that are not in Morocco, how could you summarize or introduce your company? So hello, everyone. First of all, it's a great pleasure for me to be here with all of you today, and I would like to thank the organizers for having invited me to take part in this panel. So MAMDA MDMA is a mutual insurance company. It is an insurance company that is a mutual insurance company, as its name implies. And so the insurance companies, in fact, are part that belong to the companies. There are no shareholders within these mutual insurance companies, but the companies, in fact, are the ones that own both of these mutuals. So you have a long-standing experience yourself in various sectors. And given that you are an expert of the insurance business, I would like to ask you how you would define, in just a few words, the notion of inclusive insurance. So this has been said, but I will maybe reiterate this definition. So before answering your question, in fact, I would like to recall a few points. So first of all, insurance is a social technique whose purpose is to reduce poverty. This is why insurance was created, and it is for this reason that it was developed since its existence all the way, since the beginning of modern history. So to answer your question, Mr. Horfi, according to me, inclusive insurance includes a broad range of life and non-life insurance products, including savings and micro savings, and their purpose is to be able to propose to a vulnerable or low-income population concrete solutions to be able to ensure their protection regarding one topic or the other. So inclusive insurance generally covers fragile populations, as it was discussed this morning. So women, youth, micro businesses, and rural populations. And when we talk about inclusive insurance, this obviously implies a low premiums and very simple underwriting and indemnification procedures. I would like to insist on the fact that the purpose of microinsurance isn't to replace social protection, but is a supplement. And innovation and technology are here, and so this is something that's been proven in different countries, namely those that were presented by the previous panelist, explaining that inclusive insurance must be based on technology to be able to access remote populations. For MAMDA, given that this is our insurance company was created more than 50 years ago, and that is very attentive to the rural world's issues. And so the target of inclusive insurance for our company are farmers that don't have access to conventional insurance. So I would like to ask you if your experience in working with small-scale farmers that work on small plots of land, well, has this led you to develop maybe a better inclusiveness approach for this type of population, for this type of audience? Yes, obviously, regarding different topics, as it was mentioned earlier, for agricultural and climate risks, and also I might say for health and health risks. I do believe that we have a confirmed experience in this field, and so we operate on two levers. The first is the Green Morocco Plan and its successor, the Green Generation Plan, and then we also are striving and working relentlessly on the national financial inclusion strategy. So, for example, when it comes to the climate risk product, where we cover 1.5 million hectares, so this is a product that is marketed starting from 16 dirhams per hectare, and so that is subsidized at about 90%. Given that it's a very simple product, it's very easy to understand, it has very clear covers that are very easily understood by these small-scale farmers, and we have leveraged on our experience to be able to come close to get them to underwrite these policies and to indemnify them in a very short time frames using technology. And this is something we also addressed earlier. We are partners and we are involved in several companies, namely drone technologies and whatnot, to be able to stay abreast of the agricultural seasons and the yields, to be able to estimate the yields, to anticipate the communal declaration. For example, if there is a claim or if there's a drought or a drought claim for a certain commune. And I'd like to recall that droughts represent 41% of the climate risks in Morocco. So thankfully this year we had a good amount of rainfall, but in the previous years it was quite complicated. So where technology does in fact help us for these agricultural risk products. So when a commune is considered to be subject to claims, so we trigger the indemnification procedure, and the farmer, the small-scale farmer, has no obligation to come to an office to report the claims. So as soon as they are part of a commune or a municipality that is subject to claim, the indemnification process is triggered and the farmer will be contacted to receive his or her indemnification. So last question, just to make sure that I properly understood your clarifications, and then we'll jump over to our last panelist. Are all the insurance products, can all insurance products turn into inclusive insurance products? Well, as far as individual insurance or business insurance, or whether it is for property insurance, property and casualty insurance, obviously there's a whole array of products that are currently offered to large scale, medium scale and small scale farmers. We also have some health products, including one that is called Istishfa al-Falah, and that starts at 1 dirham per day. And obviously this is a major project that we are definitely embarked on, and the idea is to continue to remain attentive to the needs of our consumers and clients. And so the idea here is not to create products but solutions, and to propose them to this population at the earliest convenience to protect them against the hazards of life. And so I'd like to jump over to our last panelist.
Last but not the least, thank you very much for being patient before giving me this opportunity. You are Sarab Gurnal, you are the lead financial sector specialist in the World Bank. You heard all the other panelists, and maybe have one first issue I want to discuss with you. What could be the critical actions policymakers should do in the coming years?
Thank you. Good afternoon, good morning, and thank you for the opportunity. Very glad to be here. So whenever we talk about the inclusive insurance, please, we should remind ourselves, most people on the planet are excluded from insurance markets today. So we are targeting huge population. This population has got different level of the development, including the technology. And the policymakers has got their environment. Of course, as a World Bank group, we are very much supportive of the idea to promote policymakers, regulatory environment, to be open the door to the market practitioners, to be able to step in and to reach these people. Because these people, the most vulnerable population in the countries, and the regulatory body try to enable legal and regulatory framework and market practice in their countries. But again, every country has got its limitations. The most important thing as a kind of the advice for the policymakers, they should focus on the two main points. One, flexibility, and the second one, proportionality. So whenever they design a provision, open the door, make sure to put some rules to open the door to the market practitioners and to decrease uncertainty. Because the most important obstacle for the market practitioners, for the insurance companies to step in developing countries, to provide the most vulnerable people protection of the coverage is uncertainty. So if the regulatory body or policymakers should focus on the three main topics. One, flexibility. Second, proportionality. And to make really minimum uncertainty. Of course, they cannot have a 100% certain approach. It is very difficult. But they can decrease the uncertainty. The big obstacle for market practitioners, for the insurance companies, uncertainty. The legal framework could push inclusive insurance and could push and support innovative approach, even innovative thoughts to be able to reach these people. Thank you.
Thank you. It means that public sector have to work with regulators and insurance company, what you call the market practitioners, to address the new needs with a legal framework that it adapted to that.
Absolutely, because whatever available tools, we have to work together.
Let me ask you, yes, let me ask you, how can we think about the use of technology to adapt? Because at the same time, telecoms has other regulators, and we have to use both technology as and insurance, but to address the needs.
Very good question, and very difficult one to address. Whenever you analyze countries around the world, it doesn't need to focus only one country or region. I do work around the globe. So insurance regulator has a huge difficulty to communicate with the other regulatory body in the country. So insurance regulatory body, along with the association of the insurance and reinsurance companies, brokers, agents, they have to increase their communication and to reach this institution in their country to explain how important it is. This is pure protection. We are not talking about the investment. We are talking about the pure protection. So to provide the protection is going to be delegate some responsibilities from the government to the private insurance sector. So they have to communicate with these related regulatory bodies, with the related institutions. We are in the 21st century. We cannot sit down in our office and to wait to open the door for us. No, the regulatory body should be very, very active to reach market practitioners, insurance companies, and ask what kind of tool, or reach out to telecommunicating companies. They ask what kind of thought and tool they have to reach this underserved population, uninsured population. I will stop here.
Yes, usually as a World Bank, you work a lot with states and governments and administration, public administration. But at the same time, you need to hear from the private sector, what you call the market practitioners. What do these guys, I'm talking about the market practitioners, need, and what could be the expectations from the regulators, from the regulatory system to address these new needs and to include more population?
Yeah, so we have to ask to both of the parties, to the policymakers and for the insurance companies. Inclusive insurance for whom?
Yes.
For the policyholders, for the technology players, for the insurance companies to increase their penetration. For the policyholders, it is priority. I mean, for the government, policyholders is priority. So inclusive insurance for the policyholders.
Okay, it's a matter of having around the table several stakeholders and several actors that we can find a common, more innovative and adapted, regulated solutions.
And association has got a huge role to be a bridge between policymakers and the market practitioners, with insurance companies. The association should take much more responsibility to translate the policy to the insurance participant. So without having the insurance companies, we cannot go ahead. You can have an excellent legal framework, excellent product around the insurance companies. If we cannot convince these people to the market practitioners, we cannot achieve anything, including the inclusive insurance. Thank you.
Thank you. I have one last question, and be a little bit late and running out of time, but I want to have that question for you. You know that public-private partnership, the PPP system, is a little bit in fashion in a lot of places in the world, and even in Africa. How can we use, and what can this PPP system bring to more inclusiveness for insurance to impact better people?
This is again an excellent question. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Moderator. PPP, it is the most effectively is working around the world when we focus on the disaster risk, including
un mécanisme de résilience face à tous les risques, y compris les risques climatiques. Alors, chaque fois que vous analysez les PPP les plus couronnés de succès dans le secteur de l'assurance, en l'occurrence, vous verrez que beaucoup de ces PPP mettent l'accent sur la gestion des risques liés aux catastrophes naturelles et aux climatiques. Les tremblements de terre, les sécheresses et autres peuvent être gérés, ou plutôt ne peuvent être gérés sans l'implication, l'engagement du public, y compris la mise en place de subventions. Et bien entendu, ces subventions ne devraient pas être une solution durable. Mais quand il s'agit d'assurance inclusive, que veut-elle dire finalement? Eh bien, c'est tout simplement ces populations qui ne sont pas couvertes par l'assurance, soit qui ne peuvent pas y accéder, que c'est peut-être un peu trop cher, mais ils ont quand même besoin de protection. Alors, le gouvernement, et dans le cas des PPP, devrait rentrer en action à travers des subventions pour être en mesure d'atteindre, de cibler et de protéger ces franges de la population les plus vulnérables, notamment par rapport aux risques de changement climatique et de risques notamment liés aux catastrophes naturelles, et des schémas d'assurance devraient être mis en place dans ce contexte. Alors,
au-delà du temps qui m'est normalement donné, mais je voudrais quand même en profiter pour poser des questions. J'ai des questions du public, alors j'en prends deux. J'en ai une pour Antoine Denoy, qui est directeur général d'AXA Climate. Monsieur Denoy, la question est suivante. Quels secteurs d'activité pourront bénéficier dans l'avenir de l'assurance paramétrique en dehors de l'agriculture? Quelle réponse vous avez envie d'apporter à cette question?
Alors, en fait, ça s'applique à tous les secteurs sur le mécanisme. Dans la réalité, les secteurs qui achètent ce type de couverture sont des secteurs qui sont très impactés par le climat. Donc, l'assurance paramétrique, c'est pas un sujet d'optimisation du chiffre d'affaires, par exemple des ventes de bière ou des ventes d'alcool par rapport à la température. On est vraiment sur des secteurs critiques qui sont sévèrement impactés par le climat. Donc, il y a l'agriculture, il y a évidemment l'énergie, il y a évidemment l'industrie et il y a le transport qui sont des secteurs majeurs très impactés par le climat pour lesquels l'assurance paramétrique fonctionne.
Merci pour cette précision. Damien Guérou, j'ai une question pour vous d'un des participants, une des participantes, qui nous demande comment les clients obtiennent les polices d'assurance. Alors, je comprends bien que la question, elle est dans un monde d'avant où il faut aller signer un papier dont on ne lit jamais les pages derrière où c'est écrit en tout petit, il faut poser sa signature. Et là, la question, c'est comment on fait pour s'assurer que le client va bien signer ces polices d'assurance, en tout cas obtenir le document papier de ces polices d'assurance.
Alors, si la question c'est nos moyens de distribution, je dirais qu'on a plusieurs piliers, mais globalement on a des agents de terrain qui sont dans la rue.
La question est plus comment on obtient la police d'assurance elle-même.
D'accord. Alors, par SMS, il y a un lien qui est envoyé avec les détails pour les gens qui n'ont pas de smartphone. C'est par SMS, oui. C'est une version très simple de la police. Et pour ceux qui ont un smartphone, il y a une application et il y a aussi tout un parcours sur WhatsApp où il y a une carte qui est envoyée, mais ensuite il y a aussi un parcours d'introduction au produit avec des vidéos qui vont expliquer vraiment comment se servir de la police.
Merci pour cette réponse. Madame, messieurs, merci beaucoup pour votre contribution. Ce fut un plaisir d'échanger avec vous. Nous allons dans quelques minutes reprendre la suite de nos travaux avec un keynote speaker qui est Suzanne Nelly, qui est la présidente et CEO de l'American Council of Life Insurers. Et donc, les discussions, que ce soit pour le keynote speaker ou le panel qui va suivre, seront menées par Yousr Tiazi. Merci de votre invitation et bon courage pour ce rendez-vous de Casablanca de l'assurance.
Merci. Au revoir.
Merci.
Innovante, une scène internationale. Bienvenue dans un univers d'innovation et d'expertise autour des métiers de l'assurance et de la réassurance.
Welcome to the Casablanca Insurance Meeting, a new format, a collective and innovative approach, an international scene. Welcome to a world of innovation and expertise around the insurance and reinsurance businesses.
Malgré toutes nos différences, il y a tellement de choses qui nous rapprochent. Comme la passion qui nous unit d'une même voix, ou quelques mots qui, sans parler, disent tout. Quand la confiance est là, compter ne compte plus. Mais quand la bienveillance est là, c'est tout ce qui compte. Un coup de main se manifeste en un coup d'œil, et peu importe le contretemps, il arrive toujours à temps. Parce que plus on se rapproche, plus la vie devient facile. Aujourd'hui, Atlanta et Sanad s'unissent pour que l'assurance soit plus simple et toujours plus proche de vous.
Atlanta Sanad Assurance, la vie nous rapproche.
Parce que ce qui nous anime, ce qui nous transcende, ce qui nous fait porter la réassurance aux frontières du possible et au-delà, notre mission, notre vision, nos valeurs, c'est ce que l'on a de plus précieux, notre monde. Et si nous bâtissions ce monde uni pour un futur plus prospère, positif, radieux, responsable, généreux, altruiste, sûr, si nous marquions le monde de demain de notre empreinte, créateur de résilience depuis 1960, nous avons une vision, devenir la référence de la réassurance dans les marchés émergents. Depuis notre création, nous tirons vers le haut notre ambition pour répondre aux exigences de nos clients et partenaires au Maroc et à l'international. Leader de la réassurance au Maroc, nous marquons de notre empreinte l'économie nationale en jouant un rôle central dans l'écosystème de l'assurance et de la réassurance au niveau national et régional, et en étant une institution financière solide, bénéficiant d'un excellent rating. Opérant dans plus de 50 marchés avec plus de 300 clients, nous mettons en avant notre savoir-faire, notre expertise afin d'offrir à nos clients et partenaires la meilleure prestation. Nous visons à être inspirés et inspirants, à partager notre savoir-faire, à accompagner de par le monde à travers la fondation SCR Académie Ré, les idées qui viennent d'éclore vers le chemin des réalisations dont nous sommes si fiers. SCR, créateur de résilience depuis 1960. Bienvenue dans le rendez-vous de Casablanca de l'assurance. Un format inédit, une approche collective et innovante, une scène internationale. Bienvenue dans un univers d'innovation et d'expertise autour des métiers de l'assurance et de la réassurance.
Welcome to the Casablanca Insurance Meeting, a new format, a collective and innovative approach, an international scene. Welcome to a world of innovation and expertise around the insurance and reinsurance businesses.
Ten, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Mesdames, Messieurs, bonjour et merci d'être parmi nous. Bienvenue de nouveau à la 7e édition du Rendez-vous de Casablanca de l'assurance. Nous avons eu ce matin une très belle cérémonie d'ouverture en présence du ministre des Finances, du Wali de Banque Al-Maghrib, du secrétaire général de l'autorité de contrôle des assurances et de la prévoyance sociale, la CAPS, et de notre hôte, le président de la Fédération marocaine des assurances et de réassurance. Vous avez été plus de 2000 délégués en provenance de 30 pays différents à assister avec nous aussi bien à l'inauguration qu'aux différents panels qui ont eu lieu ce matin. Je retiens que le Maroc a fait des avancées malgré la crise, mais qu'il reste encore des marges d'amélioration. Il se pose avec encore plus d'acuité la question de l'inclusion financière au niveau mondial, et bien sûr, nous sommes concernés au Maroc. C'est un sujet qui est porté au Maroc au plus haut niveau par Sa Majesté, le roi Mohamed VI. Comment peut-on tirer profit les uns et les autres des expériences internationales? C'est ce que nous allons voir avec nos intervenants de cet après-midi sous le thème « Inclusion en assurance et résilience aux pandémies ». Nous allons à présent écouter notre keynote, Madame Suzanne Neely, présidente directrice générale de l'ACLI, American Council of Life Insurers, sur comment combler les déficits de couverture révélés par la COVID-19 aux États-Unis. Miss Susan Neely, I hope you're with us, and I'm happy to welcome you to Casablanca.
Thank you. Révélée par la COVID-19, perspective américaine.
Ms. Susan Nilly, welcome. Welcome to you.
Merci beaucoup. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam. Wa alaikum assalam. We would have been happy to have you here in Casablanca, but maybe next time I hope everything will get better and then we'll get a chance to see you physically. So you're the president and CEO of the American Council of Life Insurers. You are described as a change maker. You have a track record of transforming industries and building consensus. Wonderful CV, and I would like to invite all our followers and delegates to go to our platform and enjoy reading all the profiles and bios of our speakers. Nelly is widely recognized as one of the most influential people in association leadership. She is a two-time Trade Association CEO of the Year, Most Influential People, and 100 Most Powerful Women in Washington. Congratulations. The American Council of Life Insurers members companies represent 94% of industry assets and provide financial security products and services to 90 million families. Ladies and gentlemen, I will not tell you more. It's now my honor to invite Susan Neely as our second keynote speaker for this event on how we can bridge the gaps that COVID exposed from the US perspective. We're all ears. Please, you have the floor.
Again, merci. It is such a pleasure to
Merci, c'est un réel plaisir d'être avec tous, avec vous tous, même virtuellement. J'aurais tellement préféré de pouvoir me joindre à vous en présentiel. Et ça aurait été ma deuxième visite au Maroc, en fait. Ça reste sur ma liste des pays que j'adorais revisiter. En tout cas, j'espère que vous me referez l'invitation pour que je puisse encore une fois voir la possibilité de voir votre beau pays, me promener dans les belles ruelles de la Médina de Marrakech. Je sais que vous avez en fait une tradition séculaire dans vos pays et je serais ravie d'être votre guide, dit l'intervenant. Et bien sûr, je vous prends en mot. Merci infiniment, Monsieur Hassan Ben Salah, notre hôte, et Monsieur Bachir Baddou pour l'invitation qui m'a été adressée pour participer à ce webinaire. Je remercie également la Fédération de l'assurance et la réassurance. Je sais que je parle au nom de tous ici aux États-Unis et comment nous apprécions énormément votre leadership. Et nous nous réjouissons de jours où on pourra justement le recevoir ici à Washington dans nos bureaux. En tout cas, il y a des moments rares dans le monde où franchement toute la planète est focalisée sur un même objectif et c'est justement ce moment que nous vivons, donc la lutte contre le Covid à l'échelle planétaire et donc tout le monde a justement ce même intérêt de lever les incertitudes. Nous vivons en fait des moments de pression politique et d'équité sociale. Les États-Unis a fait face à ses propres défis au fil de cette année en conséquence de ces pressions et je dirais que le 21 janvier, c'était un moment très puissant où nous avons vu justement l'investiture de notre nouveau président. C'était vraiment une consolidation de notre processus démocratique et l'expérience américaine peut être face à des défis, mais nous allons résister. Aujourd'hui, quand nous regardons à partir de notre fenêtre, ici dans la capitale américaine, je vois qu'effectivement des personnes qui sont là et qui résistent pour leurs croyances. Nous voyons le mall national, des gens qui se promènent pour leur liberté, et je suis rappelée même par les statues de la liberté que les États-Unis est un pays résilient et nous avons beaucoup d'espoir, nous sommes déterminés. Alors, l'histoire séculaire d'amitié entre les États-Unis et le Maroc est passée à travers beaucoup de moments très difficiles, des guerres et autres, avec un traité finalement qui a culminé entre nos deux nations, donc une histoire séculaire, et les États-Unis est reconnaissant de cette amitié historique avec le Maroc et nous y tenons. Et je suis ravie que nous puissions eh bien partager nos idées sur comment faire en sorte que nos citoyens puissent avoir une vie sécurisée et en paix. Alors, à partir de notre capitale américaine, nous avons la conviction que nous allons de l'avant avec notre pays, et nous allons de l'avant avec une belle dynamique. Le président Biden a un plan et nous nous y impliquons. Alors, j'aimerais prendre quelques moments pour vous exprimer un petit peu, vous expliquer le paysage actuel aux États-Unis et quelle est notre priorité en tant qu'industrie d'assurance vie ici aux États-Unis. Alors, mettre en exergue la dynamique politique tout d'abord. Beaucoup appellent le président Biden comme un institutionnaliste qui comprend réellement comment fonctionne le gouvernement, le Sénat. Il a travaillé longtemps au Sénat américain, il a été membre et a été élu au plus haut niveau du Sénat et a travaillé en collaboration étroite avec nos gouverneurs et nos maires locaux à travers le pays. Et pour beaucoup d'entre nous qui avons passé toute une vie à travailler dans la politique, nous pensons que son expérience de vie et professionnelle est réellement ce dont a le plus besoin notre pays et comment le gouvernement peut avancer dans ses objectifs. Le président Biden a travaillé dans plusieurs administrations, a prouvé, a travaillé auprès de leaders américains, des gens que vous connaissez, a traité des questions au niveau mondial et en tout cas a bien roulé, si vous voulez, sa bosse, si je peux le décrire ainsi. Il est engagé également à travailler avec le secteur privé et secteur privé qui fait face à de nombreux défis aujourd'hui. Nous avons j'ai d'ailleurs rencontré des grands CEO à la Chambre de commerce et tout le secteur industriel, également de l'assurance. Richmond, qui était également un grand conseiller du président Biden, m'a dit clairement
that very seriously as the life insurance sector. We believe we have a role not just to run our businesses, but to help the American people and the American economy recover. So we really see ourselves as partners with our newly elected and inaugurated president and the U.S. government in responding to the challenges we face in our country and around the globe. So now President Biden has secured passage of his big COVID relief package, another large package that's designed to help the economy stabilize and help address the immediate needs that people are having that are still, as we still deal with the pandemic. Now the president is focusing on resuscitating and helping the economy recover, as well as focusing on some of the societal issues that the pandemic has brought into sharp focus. You know, issues that we believe are right in our sweet spot as life insurers: the caregiving gap, the racial equity gap, and the wealth gap. We know there's interest in moving infrastructure legislation as a way to stimulate the economy in the long-term ways, but to do so in a way that will be using our long-term investments as insurers to help close those gaps. These are big challenges that will require innovative thinking and partnerships. There's a demand for fresh thinking, and our work at ACLI has been dedicated really over the past 2 years to preparing for this moment, developing strong leadership positions that will give us a seat at the table with our new president and newly seated Congress to really work with them. We're a leading industry for family financial certainty and protection. We're a leading industry in support of and for investments in our community, and we support and are for building a strong economy. So we're eager to get to work with our president and Congress, and I'll share more about how we're doing in just a moment. Internationally, President Biden has said diplomacy is back. I believe this is good news to Morocco and our other allies around the globe. He said diplomacy will be at the center of foreign policy, and that he is focused on uniting our democratic values with our diplomatic leadership. So this is good news for all of us. ACLI members are headquartered across Europe, Japan, and other global markets. U.S. companies operate in Morocco and over 100 markets around the world. We are glad to be engaged internationally. As a sign that U.S. priorities have changed or are perhaps back on track, we have heard from our executive branch, including the Departments of Treasury, Commerce, Labor, and State, and the U.S. Trade Representative, that all bilateral and multilateral negotiations will now consider sustainability, labor, and equality issues as key components. This aligns well with our leadership priorities as ACLI, as a life insurance leadership and industry. Access to insurance brings security and certainty for families, communities, and countries. And the desire for security and certainty is universal. So that's where we are today. As the life insurance industry, we see all of these challenges as an opportunity to do what we do best: provide a guarantee and consistency in uncertain times. As the world tries to find its footing again after a disruptive pandemic, the insurance industry is there, as we have been for centuries. U.S. life insurers believe we can help close gaps, access gaps for individuals and for our economy. And importantly, the solution to these challenges will be forged by action, not words. That's why we have taken concrete steps since I came to this office as CEO of ACLI to establish a strong value proposition, a leadership platform to show how we can be a solution to big societal challenges. We declared our commitment to protect all Americans, regardless of where and how they work, their life stage, or the economic status of their household, or how society and work change. We are seeing great progress and continued relevance for today, particularly in three areas of global significance: aging society, financial inclusion, and economic investment. So first, let me address our work on the challenge of aging society. Just as our countries share the challenge of the pandemic right now, we also share the challenge of aging societies. Aging is an urgent public policy priority, especially for G20 countries like Japan, Korea, Europe, and the US, where we have the twin challenges of increasing longevity and fewer new workers to replace retirees. Almost every G20 country has a growing percentage of citizens who are living longer and who face new risks for longevity and morbidity. But these are challenges that our industry can address. In the US, we are fighting hard to get more savings and retirement products in the hands of more people, with a particular interest in women, communities of color, small business owners, and under-resourced communities. Over 2 years ago, ACLI set a clear, focused commitment to increase access to financial protection and retirement security for all Americans. In 2019, we achieved a major win with the passage of the SECURE Act, the first meaningful piece of retirement legislation in over a decade. More than 26 million people stand to gain from the SECURE Act's provisions. Our work to move this over the finish line created bipartisan momentum and laid the groundwork for additional legislation we expect to be introduced this year. We made a commitment to put more retirement solutions in the hands of more Americans, and that's exactly what we're continuing to do. But our challenge with aging society, those challenges don't exist in a vacuum, and our solutions can't either. COVID-19 has illuminated the inequities that exist across all phases of life, which compound and place enormous pressure on our retirement system. In order to truly address the challenges of an aging society, we have to get to the root of the challenges. That brings me to our second area of focus, a commitment to financial inclusion. For individuals and businesses to engage fully in economies around the globe, and I think one of your last panelists from the World Bank was stressing this strongly. For us to engage fully in economies around the globe, individuals and businesses must be able to access financial products and services that meet their needs. By targeting areas like financial education, consumer protection, and economic empowerment, we can raise the importance of life insurance products and close critical access gaps. Last year, ACLI created our Economic Empowerment and Racial Equity Initiative to create forward motion on issues like financial inclusion. Through this initiative, we set some real concrete goals to move ahead to expand access to affordable financial security in underserved markets. We're working to advance diversity and inclusion within companies and on corporate boards. We've committed to achieve economic empowerment through financial education, and we're actively looking for ways to expand investments in underserved communities. Let me make two direct linkages to why this is relevant internationally. Our new administration has issued executive orders stating future U.S. negotiations on trade and regulation should support sustainability, improve working conditions, and be inclusive of women and minorities in the U.S. and our trade partners. At the same time, the U.S. National Association of Insurance Commissioners has established a special committee on race in insurance, signaling financial inclusion as a major priority for our regulators. I commend the International Association of Insurance Supervisors and Chair Vicky Supporta for prioritizing financial inclusion of women and minorities in their strategic plan. I'm proud to be part of the B20 Special Initiative on Women and Financial Inclusion, where one of the main objectives is to foster gender equality in the workplace and in society. All around the globe within this industry, we are seeing unified efforts to address financial inclusion. ACLI's own Economic Empowerment and Racial Equity Initiative has given us construct to think intentionally about what we, as an industry, as a sector, a powerful sector, bring to the table with a particular focus on reaching underserved communities. I'm proud, we all here are very proud to be part of these solution-oriented efforts. A collective global focus on financial inclusion will allow us to advance real change when it comes to equity and opportunity. Finally, we're taking steps to defend our ability to do business. Individual politics and national markets vary greatly, but we know that COVID has put stress on government budgets, families, and businesses around the world. Our ability to do business has never been more important. Our priority is to make sure the life insurance industry can continue to offer the products and services to people who need it most, and making sure we have the regulatory and prudential environment in order to do so. Change brings us the opportunity to stress our positive role as a source of long-term stable investment, and that has been our aim in the US. For example, the sustained low interest rate environment has placed a lot of pressure on life insurance companies. Our domestic and global members are navigating the low interest rate environment. We made it a focus to educate the US Congress on how our business model is affected. And we're sharing how our industry's $6.9 trillion investment into our US economy plays an important role in meeting the infrastructure needs in states and local communities. The US Congress recognizes this value proposition and recognized it last year and passed legislation that made important updates to the tax code to reflect today's low interest rates. The critical change that the Congress passed in December of 2020 will allow our member companies to continue offering products that people need. And we can connect our long-term investments to social good. We endeavor to promote purpose-driven investment in areas like affordable housing, broadband access, and other services benefiting underserved communities. ESG investments are an opportunity to do this. I commend you and this distinguished conference for tackling issues of investment and growth during this conference. Speaking with and learning from each other helps us in representing consumers and in supporting our government's investment and growth. And it's our commitment to leadership issues like aging society and financial inclusion that give us a strong foundation to fight for our ability to do business. So let me close by saying this. This has been a tough year for families, for communities, and for countries. The US is just one perspective. Each of us, from our own vantage points, see the challenges that our countries and our people face. Each of us know the gaps that the pandemic has exposed. But I am mindful that we as leaders in insurance have an opportunity to be the bridge, to close those gaps, to find innovative solutions, to ensure greater access, to provide certainty in an uncertain world. I commend you for the discussions you are having at this conference, and I thank you very sincerely for the opportunity to speak. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for being with us. May I ask you a small question that came through our platform? The pandemic forced insurers in the US and around the world to change how they do business. What were some of the things the US life insurers did differently, and will they continue after the pandemic is over?
Well, thank you. It's such an excellent and relevant question. It's hard to believe it's been a year since we all began working remotely. The life insurance companies in the US began working remotely and, importantly, delivering services to their policyholders. And one of the key changes was the need and then the ability to utilize technology to utilize e-signatures, e-notarizations, to be able to license new producers and agents using temporary licensing that didn't involve those new agents having to go to a meeting in person with a regulator. Just some of the things that were very important to stay in business. We actually, an interesting statistic is that the life insurance industry in the US, across all of our product lines, retirement, life insurance, disability insurance, long-term care insurance, we pay policyholders $2.1 billion a day, every day. In contrast, our government-supported Social Security system pays $2.7 billion a day. So that statistic just gives, I think, a perhaps eye-popping sense of the scope and importance of what we do. So being able to operate remotely and keep all of that going was the #1 priority a year ago. I'm very proud to say that life insurers delivered that. And importantly, our regulators, working closely with the National Association of Insurance Commissioners, the NAIC, gave permission to utilize these new tools. So we call them regulatory accommodations. Our regulators understood the importance of us staying in business and being able to help people. Now, of course, because we believe it's all gone seamlessly and we've been able to operate taking advantage of technology, that these would be important accommodations to make permanent. And so that's something that we're actively talking to our regulators about, and hope that that will be the a positive progress that comes from the pandemic. So out of all the chaos and difficulty, that would be something very important that would be valuable, not just to the industry and how we run our businesses, but to our consumers and policyholders as well.
Thank you very much, Ms. Susan Neely. Thank you for being with us, and thank you for your very precious contribution and your beautiful enthusiasm about what is happening. Thank you very much, and we hope we'll be welcoming you, and I hope you'll stay with us during those couple of days. Alors, mesdames et messieurs, nous allons...
Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, we will welcome our panelists for a roundtable. We'll shed light on the way that different institutions have succeeded in managing COVID in their respective countries. So our panel's composed of Mrs. Delphine Traoré, Dr. Corneille Clark-Izzy, who's the Director General of Africa Ray, Mr. Youssef Assifihri, the Director General of the Société Centrale de Réassurance, and Mr. Daniel Steen, the Vice President and Counsel in the American Property Casualty Insurance Association. So, ladies and gentlemen, you can submit your questions on the platform, and I will gladly pick a few to question our panelists. So let's hop back on the line in just a few moments.
Retour d'expérience sur la gestion de la Covid. retour d'expérience sur la gestion de la Covid. Bienvenue dans le rendez-vous de Casablanca de l'assurance. Un format inédit, une approche collective et innovante, une scène internationale. Bienvenue dans un univers d'innovation et d'expertise autour des métiers de l'assurance et de la réassurance.
Welcome to the Casablanca Insurance Meeting, a new format, a collective and innovative approach, an international scene. Welcome to a world of innovation and expertise around the insurance and reinsurance businesses.
Malgré toutes nos différences, il y a tellement de choses qui nous rapprochent. Comme la passion qui nous unit d'une même voix, ou quelques mots qui, sans parler, disent tout. Quand la confiance est là, compter ne compte plus.
Essaye, هذه l'anglais هذه. Essaye, هذه القناة 1. Essaye.
En un coup d'œil, et peu importe le contretemps, il arrive toujours à temps. Parce que plus on se rapproche, plus la vie devient facile. Aujourd'hui, Atlanta et Sanad s'unissent pour que l'assurance soit plus simple et toujours plus proche de vous.
Atlanta Sanad Assurance, la vie nous rapproche.
Parce que ce qui nous anime, ce qui nous transcende, ce qui nous fait porter la réassurance aux frontières du possible et au-delà, notre mission, notre vision, nos valeurs, c'est ce que l'on a de plus précieux, notre monde. Et si nous bâtissions ce monde uni pour un futur plus prospère, positif, radieux, responsable, généreux, altruiste, sûr, si nous marquions le monde de...
Testing.
Okay. Créateurs de résilience depuis 1960, nous avons une vision, devenir la référence de la réassurance dans les marchés émergents. Depuis notre création, nous tirons vers le haut notre ambition pour répondre aux exigences de nos clients et partenaires au Maroc et à l'international. Leader de la réassurance au Maroc, nous marquons de notre empreinte l'économie nationale en jouant un rôle central dans l'écosystème de l'assurance et de la réassurance au niveau national et régional, et en étant une institution financière solide, bénéficiant d'un excellent rating. Opérant dans plus de 50 marchés avec plus de 300 clients, nous mettons en avant notre savoir-faire, notre expertise afin d'offrir à nos clients et partenaires la meilleure prestation. Nous visons à être inspirés et inspirants, à partager notre savoir-faire, à accompagner de par le monde à travers la fondation SCR Académie Ré, les idées qui viennent d'éclore vers le chemin des réalisations dont nous sommes si fiers. SCR, créateur de résilience depuis 1960. Bienvenue dans le rendez-vous de Casablanca de l'assurance, un format inédit, une approche collective et innovante, une scène internationale. Bienvenue dans un univers d'innovation et d'expertise autour des métiers de l'assurance et de la réassurance.
Welcome to the Casablanca Insurance.
Retour d'expérience sur la gestion de la Covid. Retour d'expérience sur la gestion de la Covid.
Mesdames et messieurs,
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome once again. So you've had the opportunity of discovering our partners, but also our experts and the panelists for this afternoon's session. So I would just like to say a few words to introduce our first speaker. So Mrs. Delphine Traoré. So she's the member of the board of directors of Alliance Africa as the regional director for operations in charge of the development of the Alliance Group on the African continent. She has previously held the position of the CEO of Alliance Global Corporate Specialty Africa. Delphine is a member of several boards of directors, including the African Risk Capacity, ARC, and was also elected in June 2019 the president of the African Insurance Companies Association. So welcome, madam, welcome to all of our panelists. And I also would like to start by asking you first question. So where are you right now? Where are you geographically located right now? So I am currently in Abidjan, at the heart of Abidjan. So I'm a great fan of your capital and of your country, and so we're delighted to be able to welcome you here in Casablanca, even if it's only virtually. So first question I'd like to ask you, so what actions have you undertaken to prepare your teams to continue to serve your insured from the first phases of the pandemic? So how did you proceed, and how were your actions structured? So first of all, I would like to thank the Casablanca Insurance Meeting for the invitation. It's an honor for me to be here. I would have preferred being there in person. I miss Morocco dearly, but I look forward to be able to come soon. So as soon as the pandemic struck, even before it was announced, the first thing that we did was to create a crisis management team. And so this crisis management team included our IT teams, it included our HR and communications teams, and it also included the business unit leaders, because obviously we need to ensure that there was visibility and transparency for all of the countries in which we were established. And we included the CEOs of all the subsidiaries to ensure that there was no panic in the subsidiaries, and that we were able to identify all of those that fell ill, and to have an action plan in place as soon as somebody in the office were to fall ill, and to remain an open communication line. The second thing we did was to interrupt all travel. So all travel, aside from the home country, needed to be approved by myself and the head of the crisis management team. What was interesting for us is that we had already started a digital transformation. And as I mentioned earlier, we had 10% of our revenue was invested in a digital transformation that would take 2, 3, 4, 5 years. And as such, we had already laid the groundwork to ensure that our teams could already start working remotely. But with the pandemic, we had to speed things up. So we had 20% of our staff, which 1,300 people have had the possibility of working from home. And just after a few weeks, given that we had the basis of this IT infrastructure, we were able to deploy this for our 1,300 employees. So 100% of our staff had to work from home and to have access to their files from home, and to be fully functional. So they didn't necessarily need to have a work computer to be able to connect and to work. And so we in fact created a sort of virtual service, and through their home computer they could access all of the necessary files. The second step was that we wanted to ensure that there was no business interruption or no interruption the way that we manage our clients. So we needed to protect our customers, protect our staff, obviously, and allow them to make their payments online, to have access to us online. And so this is what we started out by doing. So first of all, to ensure that our employees were safe, but also to ensure that there was no interruption of our business. So another question I'd like to ask you, so how do you see the development of online services in the near future? Given all of this experience that you've acquired and all of the resources you've invested. So from the outset, we wanted to make sure that our teams could work online. And with the pandemic, we realized that there's a major gap between the purchasing insurance products online. And I was taking a look at some statistics, only 30% of sub-Saharan African insurance companies that allow their customers to view their insurance accounts online, which is very different from banks. And only 5% of those allowed, and this is excluding South Africa, of course, that would allow their customers to take out an insurance policy online. Obviously, there are also some regulation issues. I mean, e-signatures are not authorized in all countries, but we realized that we couldn't think about increasing the penetration rate of Africa without focusing on digitalization. And we could continue to tackle, try to have a greater piece of the pie. But obviously, we needed to, first of all, increase the penetration rate. And the best way to do that is through digital services, and the broadening of digital services. I think we've heard about 400 million mobile wallets in Africa, and so this just goes to show you this great opportunity of customers to whom we can sell insurance. And right now I'm speaking on behalf of Alliance, but also on behalf of the association. We need to see how we can digitalize insurance and allow these companies to have access to insurance companies without having to walk into our office. So thank you for being here with us. We'll also be receiving some questions from the audience, and I most probably will get back to you with a few questions. So now I'd like to ask a question to Mr. Youssef Fassifiri. Welcome to you, Mr. Fassifiri, and I'm delighted to see you again, even if it's through a screen. I'm delighted to be able to meet you once again. So just to give you a short intro on Mr. Fassifiri, since 2016, he is the Director General of the Société Centrale de Réassurance. So he has supported over the course of his career, supported many strategic companies nationally in their restructuring, in their redeployment. And Mr. Fassifiri has strived for the restructuring of SCR by conducting two strategic restructuring plans in a difficult context. So two questions for you, Mr. Fassifiri. So how have you succeeded in measuring or preserving the impact of the health crisis that was triggered by COVID-19?
Et je dirais, il était important quand on a eu connaissance début janvier, je dirais, de cette crise, de commencer à réfléchir et à mettre en place toutes les mesures qui étaient nécessaires pour limiter, je dirais, l'impact au niveau et de mesurer ces impacts-là au niveau de l'entreprise. Donc, je dirais, notre signature au sein de la SR, c'est créateur de résilience. Donc, il fallait, je dirais, par cet ADN, s'imposer et se donner cette religion et cette conviction aussi forte. Et donc, il était nécessaire donc, de travailler sur d'abord ce travail de distanciation. Donc, 10 jours avant la décision gouvernementale de considérer que le confinement était décrété, je me suis mis 10 jours avant, je dirais, moi-même, J'ai été confiné et j'avais la certitude comme quoi tous les applicatifs métiers étaient donc disponibles et en service. Et
also service. And at the same time, at the confinement, we were 100% operational.
Tous les outils, tous les applicatifs métiers pour pouvoir travailler. Donc, c'est un élément qui était essentiel. Bien sûr, on a mis en place une cellule d'écoute et de soutien psychologique, puisqu'on est dans une période qui a été relativement très étrange, accompagné par un psychologue pour maintenir, je dirais, le mindset des équipes. Et on a lancé, je dirais, du dépistage quasiment toutes les 2 semaines à l'ensemble de nos collaborateurs, puisqu'on ne connaissait pas cette
because we did not know, of course, the effect that this could have. This exacerbation of the phenomenon could have. So these are 2 prevention actions in a logic where we had 22 that were defined within the framework of our PCA. The important point was the protection and security of the staff, and the business continuity action that would allow us to measure the impacts that were to ensure in a contract as to whether we did have specific commitments to that end, and also in terms of business to be able to anticipate the shocks. And I will give more details about. Thank you for your responsiveness. But it goes without saying that periods of crisis, just like this one, reveals fragilities in the system, and we have seen that occur the world over. Also in the countries that were that thought to be best prepared to this and to all types of crises. These crises certainly reveal fragilities, but also opportunities. What has your experience been in that respect? Well, the watchword was to define what was going to be the impact for the fiscal year 2020, to really get to know the impact. So we've seen and revisited all of our portfolio. We defined the impacts that were the most important, that were the financial impacts, and to see according to different scenarios the solvency margin that we would be able to have taken into account the stress tests, etc., etc. So much so that what was important is to showcase that our solvency margin remains comfortable vis-a-vis or in the face of such shocks. So we've been able, after 2.5 months, to assess these impacts by rereading all of these contracts. So let me come back on this point now. We needed to have a committed collective action with a new mindset, i.e., to accept to navigate among this mist and fog with few and low visibility, knowing that this is an inhibitory environment. So we needed to have a combative spirit and agility. This situation was also an opportunity because we kind of lost sense and orientation. So we said that by working on the values of the SCR with all of the teams, we have used the virtual means available. We have worked in such a way as to establish a deep-rooted notion of belongingship and to be able to strengthen and build the bonds that were that marked this very tragic situation. Several collaborative workshops have been set up, and we've worked on that part too. And I've considered that starting from there, in this spur or momentum, it was interesting. It proved interesting to know how we transformed this and what were the mechanisms to be rolled out. And starting therefrom, we said we're going to be initiating a new strategic plan. We're going to be launching a new strategic plan, which we did in the full period of COVID. It was magnificent for me. It was a very, very eye-opening experiences. We needed to ponder on and reflect on this new strategic plan. a situation of crisis. It kind of caused the adrenaline to rush up. And we've defined several pillars on the strategic plan. Mostly, I would say, with the ambitions that were marked up until 2023, and mostly focused on financial profitability and defining key indicators, just like the RO, that should be in excess of 11%. We have also made the business plan more resilient in order to have all of the certainties according to all of our activities as to whether we will be able to succeed and to reach 2023 on a sound footing. And I would say also a massive investment on digital transformation. Hence, we acquired an ERM, Enterprise Resource Management tool, that was quite heavy and costly, and we've invested in it for more than 4 years. It was already used back then, and it allowed us to do all of the stress tests on the 3-4 years to come, according to the Solvency II standards, in order to know the volatility and the variation as per or as function of, bear with me, of the shocks that are either financial shocks or technical shocks, and define this impact and be able to also know this resilience. So we were always at a solvency margin on a standalone basis, which is higher than 180% according to the Solvency II model. Thank you very much. And I hope that what you have just told us today and here will be also inspiring for other international operators. Thank you for your responsiveness, and I'll be back to you for other questions. Doubtless. And now I'd like to give the floor. But before that, I would like to introduce Dr. Cornet Karakazi, Director General of Africa Ray. Dr. Cornet Karakazi, he's going to speak in English. Bienvenue à vous, Monsieur Karakazi. Nous sommes vraiment heureux de vous avoir. Est-ce que vous allez parler en anglais, probablement? Certes, oui. Je voudrais juste dire un petit mot sur votre CV, mais j'invite l'ensemble des participants à aller sur notre plateforme et à découvrir davantage le CV de chacun des orateurs. Dr. Conner s'est joint à la Africa Ray Group en 2009 en tant que directeur général adjoint et PDG élu avant de devenir son directeur administrateur et PDG en 2011. Dr. Karakazi est accrédité pour la transformation récente de Africa en étant justement l'une des entreprises les plus rentables à travers le monde. Félicitations. Aujourd'hui, plusieurs analystes à travers le monde voient en Africa Ray l'élément essentiel de l'intégration africaine dans le domaine de l'assurance et de la réassurance. Depuis 1996, professeur Dr. Karakazi a significativement développé au développement de l'assurance et de l'industrie de la réassurance en Afrique à travers son implication et son engagement au niveau national, régional et continental à travers différents projets. Bienvenue à vous. Et ma première question à vous, Monsieur Karakazi, quelle est la problématique numéro 1 ou alors quelle est la menace numéro 1 à laquelle vous avez été confronté lorsque le virus de la pandémie 19 a éclaté, si je puis dire, en 2020?
Let me first thank the organizers and especially Mr. Ashil Badu, my friend, for inviting me to this wonderful conference, which I used to attend personally for many years. So it is something quite strange today. It has been 2 years. So thank you very much for that question. I think the biggest threat has been for our corporation, the same as many other people and businesses and around the world. So the first one was to protect our staff. So we were scared like anyone, and we had to take measures. And fortunately, as I've been saying in other conferences, we were a bit prepared, more than many other places because of the Ebola outbreak, the Ebola virus outbreak in the past years in the West African countries. So we had some reflexes which we put in place quickly. There were hand sanitizers, there were business continuity plans in place, and so on, disaster management policies. So we had just to roll them out. But It was, of course, not easy at all to have all our staff locked in their houses without meeting. And yet we had to produce superior value, superior performance as we used to be. So first, it was health. So that was the biggest threat. And in terms of business and our operations, the major one was financial market collapse, which at the end of the first quarter, as you know, all markets were sincerely hit, and as well as economies. And for a particular point for Africa was the collapse of currencies as we report in US dollars. So around Africa, there was a big impact. So that was a major threat to our business, to our balance sheet, to our capital. Thank to God and thank to our strategy, thank to our thinking since the beginning. So we had enough capital to cushion such impact, and with time after the economic stimulus of various economies, so we came back to normal business towards August, and by August we have already finalized our revised budget for 2020. So I can say that so far so good. There were fears, but we worked with hope in all that time. Thank you.
So do you consider that you have succeeded in crossing this very difficult, very exceptional situation? And if you have succeeded, what are your measurements? How would you express in what you have succeeded, how you have succeeded, and on what?
Yeah, thank you very much. I think we have succeeded tremendously, beyond what we thought.
Okay.
And I believe that most insurance markets around the continent, from the information we have, and even reinsurance, have done very well in terms of top line premium income, in terms of combined ratio. Yes, there is an impact of COVID-19 related claims, which has come to hit, but most of our industry players had the necessary capital. And if you look at those claims, they are not as big as the previous natural catastrophes we had, since we are talking about 26 billion. So for Africa, it will be less than 35 billion if we include the Beirut blast. So we have succeeded to grow in terms of original currency, though they were a bit hit, a small hit from the depreciation of some currencies around the continent. Despite the low interest rate environment in which we operated, as you know, many economies reduced their interest rates to stimulate their economies. So we have achieved to have a very good growth on our investment and a very good return on our investment. And this is, again, thanks to the financial markets, which are really doing well and ended on a positive note. On operational side, it's an irony that working from home, in our case, has been extremely more productive. And we have implemented two major projects in IT, which were the renovation of our IT systems. And one is Oracle Business, another one is a new reinsurance system. And we implemented them seamlessly, in time, within budget, and within quality, as I said before. So this was really, we are still learning what could be the reasons. Would it be that we were losing time in commuting to go to office, or is it that people are enjoying working flexible hours? We are still learning exactly what happened, but we did tremendously very well in terms of implementing what has been waiting for many years. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, and congratulations. I hope what you're saying is not going to inspire some of our decision makers on provoking new lockdowns, but congratulations for your observation. Now it's my pleasure and honor to introduce our fourth panelist, Monsieur Daniel Steen. Mr. Daniel Steen, welcome to Casablanca, even if it's virtually. We hope we will receive you soon physically. Mr. Steen is Vice President and Counsel Liability for the American Property Casualty Insurance Association. Dan Steen serves the American Property Casualty Insurance Association as Vice President Liability. He works to advance initiatives on legal defense and reforms at both the state and federal levels. His leadership roles include service as chair of the Legal Reform Policy Subcommittee for the National Association of Manufacturers and as a member of the board of the American Tort Reform Association. He has worked extensively in Europe, South America, and Asia Pacific regions. Welcome. And where are you based now?
I'm based in Washington, D.C.
Yeah.
And so like the rest of my colleagues on this panel, we've been in lockdown for over a year now. So I think we're all learning to work virtually, and certainly our association, the American Property Casualty Insurance Association, is in the same footing as our other organizations around the globe, all working virtually at the state and federal level.
Okay, and how is it happening in terms of performance? Can you also say that the performance was there, the results were there?
Yeah, we're very pleased about how the last year has gone for us as an association, as an industry. We think we worked very well. Our organization is primarily about policy and compliance issues and legal issues. So our people are on their computers anyway, but certainly there were challenges around technology and working together. We have offices in Washington, D.C. and Chicago, so there was a lot of virtual beforehand, but certainly more so now.
Okay.
But yeah, I think an indication that it's working well for the industry, and you had Susan Ely on earlier, probably runs across the various sectors in the U.S., the insurance sectors, that we're not returning to the office for at least several months ahead of us. So we have a very, hopefully not too dusty an office at this point after months sitting.
Okay, you had the chance of having an international exposure to the insurance industry in Europe, Asia. So I have a question for you. Unlike Australians, United Kingdom, Europe, the US industry has largely withstood attempts to the courts to require insurance coverage for the pandemic losses. What insights can you provide on this?
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it's been very different because particularly we've been following the UK, the court decisions very closely. And I think it's fair to say at a very high level that the US policies are very clear about the property damage requirement necessary for business interruption coverage, which have been the bulk of the claims with insurers. Having said that, denials of claims for coverage due to COVID-19 and stay-at-home orders, they've generated over 1,500 cases. So we've had quite a large number of cases, and the courts have issued just about 100 rulings on efforts to dismiss these cases where insurers, the motion to dismiss in the U.S. would be an early stage in the case where the case or the action is dismissed before it goes to trial. And we've had about 100 rulings on those cases, most of which have gone in the favor of the insurers because I think the policy has been very clear. From the very first decision we had back last July, in the state of Michigan, a state judge ruled that a restaurant operator could not force its insurer to cover pandemic-related losses based on there was no sustained direct physical loss or damage, which is really a threshold requirement for business interruption coverage in virtually all our commercial property policies in the U.S. And even if the restaurant owner had been able to allege successfully a physical loss or damage to the property, an exclusion for virus-related losses would still apply to bar the coverage. So that case is on appeal. A lot of other cases on appeal. We've had about 70, at least 70 federal states and courts of federal and state courts have ruled, and most of those have all dismissed policyholders' claims. There have been some policyholder claims that have gone forward, and so that litigation will continue. But at an early stage, I think the U.S. industry is pleased about how their policies have held up in the courts.
The U.S. industry has been considering how to address the next pandemic. The American Property Casualty Insurance Association has proposed a business continuity protection program known as BCPP, and there are other proposals that have been brought forward. What can you tell us about the industry proposal and the others that have been offered, please?
So, thank you. Yeah, so our colleagues from the almost the beginning of this pandemic, we've been thinking about the next pandemic. And we've been working closely with our partners, both NAMIC, the Mutual Insurance Company Organization, and the Big I, we call it the Big I, the insurance agents, which represents about 90% of the industry. And together we came together on this business continuity protection program, which envisions that the federal government would provide up to 3 months of lost business protection for participating businesses. So this has been a debate in the U.S. since last summer. And we were not the only proposal out there. As you referenced, there was a proposal is a proposal still pending in the last Congress by a congresswoman who is chair of the subcommittee that handles insurance, to create a new program based on the Terrorism Risk Insurance Act, TRIA, which would require coverage across various lines by insurers. The APCIA and our partners took the position that really insurance is not appropriate in this case based on really 5 principles. One, it's not insurable. The potential magnitude of the crises requires a federal solution. Federal government needs to act here. Federal protection must be administered simply and must be subsidized heavily to make it affordable for small businesses. It must have a certainty of recovery, and we also think insurers can play a role in administering any program. So without going into all, we can spend an hour going into all the details about that program, but let me say that we had a hearing on it, hearing on the various proposals, a program in September, again in November. They ultimately did not move forward on propping up both businesses, but also now providing support for employees. And with that, there's probably a bit of a pause now happening relating to the just the expense of any kind of such program. And I think that probably serves the industry and our policyholders well, because we're in the position where it's very difficult to plan for the next pandemic in the middle of the current pandemic. So I think we're watching, I think the activity continues into this year, a year later, and it is taking a lot of energy, including my own, around creating, working on this new program, as we have a team working on this. But I think the pace is probably slowed down quite a bit on creating a solution for the next pandemic.
Thank you, Mr. Daniel Steen. Thank you very much. And we are a little short in time, so I'll just go through each panelist for the last question. Et alors, ma question, je souhaiterais l'adresser.
My question to Mrs. Delphine Traoré, I would say that you are the president of the AIO, African Insurance Organization. How is your growth and financial health have been impacted by this crisis, if any? We've heard from other speakers that they had not felt any impact on the gross volumes of sales or the results. What was the case for you? No, it was not the case for us, to be honest with you. We have had impacts on the growth. Doubtless. Also, we had a 10 to 15 years per annum growth, and in 2020 we have remained on a plateau, same level. At the beginning of the pandemics, we had less claims, quite obviously, because there were less cars in traffic, et cetera, and less activity. But we have started this activity change by the end of 2020. So we had a financially difficult year, goes without saying. It was the most difficult year for us ever since the inception of Alliance Africa. But we say that in 2021, we've already started the year on a better footing, and we hope it's going to continue. One of the important things for us too is to make sure that we had the agility for it well, because some of our customers did not have any means to pay their insurance premiums. So we had to make sure that we are agile and we could postpone the payment to a certain time later, et cetera, and we make sure that we have a clearer visibility on the liquidity. Sorry, not agility, liquidity. Now, for us, it was a difficult year, I have to acknowledge, yes. Thank you very much, Madam, and Mr. Youssef Fassiferi, thank you for having been with us, Madam Traore. Mr. Youssef Fassiferi, now, future-wise, how do you see the close future in this very nice sector of yours, this insurance? What's your vision on the very question and the situation? I think that we have to be very prudent. And in other words, in my opinion, the crisis is still ahead of us. We need to really use these moments with somewhat humility and modesty, because they might be negative evolutions. But likewise, I would say that the groups and company groups must be resilient and develop this strength of being able to work and design new and devise new solutions and new growth possibilities. As far as we are concerned at ESCR, we have had a growth which is hovering around 30%, but which is relative not only to the COVID, but to the different projects that we've already initiated beforehand. And we are of the opinion that there are opportunities, doubtless, that has been organically increasing or externally increasing, and we are now part of that move of this logic with indeed an ROI, if not an ROE, return on equity, that is still interesting for the shareholders. So we are a 12% ROE, return on equity. So it remains comfortable to a certain extent. But the most important thing here, one of the most important things, is to ensure that the financial investments or cash, as Mrs. Traore said, is a topic that we have to remain prudent on. And mostly we have to remain humble, because we do not know how things are going to evolve. We don't know yet the impacts of this crisis on the future years. Thank you, Dr. Karakaze. Quel est l'enseignement? Si vous pouvez nous parler justement de...
If you had to say in a few words, most important learning, and I'll be asking also Mr. Daniel Steen, the most important learning, in a few words. We can't hear you. Wait, please. Il y a un problème de son.
Sorry.
Please.
So I think the capacity of innovation and the resilience of humankind is limitless. We have seen that we can do a lot better and quicker. So my hope is that we use this strength, this discovery, to be more relevant as insurers and as insurance to our communities. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Steen, on the same question, most important learning?
Well said by my colleague. I would only add that I think the other learning for all of us, and I think for the government and such, is that the insurance really is a critical element in the financial system of the U.S. and globally, right? So that it's more than just a safety mechanism, but in fact, it makes many things possible, from these kind of conferences to business flowing well. So I think that's been a big learning, and it's something we're really going to be talking about more in the U.S.
Thank you very much to all of you. Thank you for your participation, precious contributions. En votre nom, je souhaite remercier nos intervenants prestigieux pour leurs précieuses contributions.
On your behalf, I would like to thank all of the panelists for their precious contributions. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, we'll be concluding this first day of the of the Casablanca Insurance Meetings by giving the floor to our third keynote, Mrs. Florence Keynote. She's the president of the French Insurance Federation, which has provided great support to many African countries in terms of technical assistance and training, and I would like to thank her. Welcome to you, Madame Florence Usman, the president of the French Insurance Federation since October 1st, 2019. So I'd like to wish you, Madam, a great warm welcome. So are you here with us? I'm asking the technical team to make sure that you are indeed here with us. So I'd like to take this opportunity just to give a brief intro on your background. So Mrs. Lustman is a general inspector of finance. She has led the insurance supervision authority as a secretary general. She was also a founding member of the CIOPS, which became the IOPA. You are a member of the executive committee of the International Association of Insurance Supervisors and a member of the Standard Advisory Council of the International Accounting Standard Board. So we are greatly honored to have you here with us. So we are all ears, and we are looking forward to what you'll have to share with us. And I'll try to ask a few questions at the end of your presentation, or I'll share the questions that were shared by our audience. So thank you very much for this invitation to the Casablanca Insurance Meeting. Year after year, these meetings are really a major highlight of the insurance in the world, and so that we've been able to see that with the great panelists that have taken the floor over the course of this day. We all obviously regret not being able to be physically in Casablanca, and we look forward to being there in person next year. But at least thanks to technical innovation, we managed to be connected together here today, despite being in the around the world. And as you very well mentioned, in France, we enjoy very close relations with the Moroccan Federation, and for a very long time. So it's a great honor for me and a great pleasure to be able to take part in this event. So the 2021 edition is dedicated to the pandemic, so a topical theme. But in a way, it's also a theme that concerns the future, because this pandemic will have major repercussions on the world and on the planet and on our insurance business in particular. So even from afar, I paid close attention to all of the discussions, and what I've noticed is that there's a great convergence amongst the insurers of the world. We have shared the same observations, and we all share the same challenges. And one of the panelists, in fact, was saying that this crisis has revealed the high expectations that were expressed vis-à-vis our sector. And this crisis also showed the limits of the insurance business. And it also recalled the importance of insurance for the resilience of our societies. And so we must admit that this crisis is unprecedented, that took us by surprise, including us in the insurance business. And so even if pandemics was a part of our risk mappings, and so for us, the pandemic maybe implied more illnesses and more deaths. So the insurance segments that should have been impacted by a pandemic was health or insurance or death insurance. And obviously this was not the case, and nobody in the world had made the connection between a pandemic and the interruption in an administrative interruption of our economies. And this was absolutely not anticipated. So it's a great lesson of humility for everyone. This crisis particularly impacted Europe, France, and the rest of the world. It impacted it from a risk standpoint for the insured risks, and especially the business interruption that has caused in all of the businesses that were interrupted. And in France, there was a major impact on financial markets, and a year ago, and so it was in fact our first lockdown, which was very difficult. And in fact, even insurance intermediaries had interrupted their operations. And mid-March, we had a strong major decline in financial markets, but also a decline in the bond markets. And as you might imagine, this had a very negative impact. So we entered into this first lockdown with this shock on the markets, on the rates. So our key priority as insurers, as French insurers, and I believe for the community, insurance communities at large, was the major priority were our insured. So what was the biggest priority for our insured was obviously to be able to continue insuring them. We are an essential service, and claims and water damage, fires obviously did not stop with the lockdown. So what we did in France, what was done pretty much around the world, well, we put 150,000 employees on a remote working mode, and this is a great source of pride to have managed to provide the services. And back then, we managed about 20,000 claims per day during the first lockdown, which was quite substantial. And through the commitment of our teams, who ended up having to work from home almost instantly. The second priority for our insured was to ensure that we insurers would remain solvent. So in the very short term, we needed to manage the claim. That's the very least we could do, but we also needed to see what the impact of this crisis would have on our balance sheet. Because obviously our main concern is our solvency. Their insured need to be sure that we would be by their side in a year, in 5 years, or in 30 years. And it's true that we as French insurers, and I'm sure that this same applies to my colleagues throughout the rest of the world, well, this took us a couple of weeks to figure out, to quantify the real impact of this crisis. We also instantly decided on putting in place a whole set of solidarity measures in addition to our contracts and policies. And throughout the entire crisis, French insurers showed a great deal of generosity and solidarity for their insured, and also for citizens, not only insured, which amounted to about 1 billion euros, from reducing premiums to free months of rent, financial aid, donations of masks, of funding research, and we also continued to support youth. And we figured that this crisis was also an opportunity for us to draw into insurance very interesting profiles. And for example, in 2020, we increased by 50% the number of youth in the policyholders of our insurance companies. And so we were able to put in place measures regarding gender equality, diversity, and we wanted to send a strong signal that the business was going on, and even though it was not necessarily business as usual, but that business was going on nonetheless. So this crisis that took place this year did have a multiple and significant impacts on insurers, with a major there was a major issue in France with business interruption, and just to give a shout out to our American friends because we very much appreciated the position that was taken by the NIAC, which was at least the very much faster than what our financial authority said, that we could not ask insurers to simply provide coverage aside from the covers that were in the insurance contracts. But in France, for example, the restaurant, the hospitality industry, the hotel industry would have hoped to be indemnified for business interruption that were not provided for in the contracts. And unfortunately, the confirmation of the fact that these covers were not included in the contracts, or at least for 93% of the cases was not included. Well, this confirmation arrived from our regulatory authority in June. And the one thing that I do regret is that we left all of these professionals sort of remain hopeful that they would be able to obtain this systematic indemnification from the insurers. Obviously, it's simply impossible. I mean, the amount of the business interruption for these impacted companies probably amounted to 880 billion euros, excuse me. And so this was absolutely not possible nor realistic. But there was this major expectation that was expressed vis-a-vis the insurance industry. What I do regret about the crisis is that we could not nip it at the bud and nip this expectation at the bud, because obviously these restaurateurs, these the industry were in very much economic distress, and we tried to support them because they are our insured, and so our intermediaries were reporting all of their difficulties and challenges to us. But we were in a dead end, and obviously we could not provide cover that was not included in our contracts and policies. So regarding our policies and contracts, we had a major impact in terms of claims. We've had almost 3 billion euros in claims. More 3 billion euros in claims were directly connected to COVID. And so these were claims that mainly concerned companies. And so obviously for business interruption, there were 3% of the contracts that covered them. And there were 4% of contracts where insurance companies made some commercial gestures. And so there were others where that still benefited from some sort of indemnification, even if there wasn't any coverage that was provided for in the initial contract. We also have health insurance and social welfare insurance that were strongly impacted, and so social welfare, corporate social welfare that indemnified unemployment, and so which increased by 20%. So there were a lot of people to indemnify. So just to echo what one of the panelists just said, I mean, we in fact had less auto claims because during the first lockdown we were not very much allowed to travel or move, so cars weren't really being used except those for healthcare providers. So there was a positive impact on auto claims, or the frequency of auto claims. But overall, we could see that, I mean, it represented about a surplus of excess 3 billion euros that were caused by COVID, in addition to the different solidarity initiatives, and so which amounted to in total to 3 billion plus 1.7 billion in the solidarity gesture. So there, as far as life insurance, which experienced a major lower collections and a sort of net decollection. So we dispersed more benefits than we received, and with 6.5 billion in disbursements, and with a very big differentiation. We had a very strong discollection in euros, so for guaranteed capital, and on the other hand, a net collection that was highly positive on unit accounts. And so for the French market, this was some excellent news. This means that the transformation of this life insurance model on the French way was starting to take place. What's also a great news for our intermediary insurance friends is that this year 2020 also showed to which extent they were necessary to the proper functioning of our industry. So why did we collect much less? Why did we have much less collections? Well, simply because our intermediaries were closed during the first lockdown, and so there were a entire quarter during which there was an interruption of business interruption. So there was a lot less interaction, and so this just goes to show that life insurance is a product which requires a lot of advisory to be properly sold. I mean, there's a lot of it needs a push. It needs a real push to be sold, to properly understand the needs of the client, to understand their risk appetite, to be able to propose the best possible contract which meets the client's demands. So once again, if we want to see the glass half full, this is a sort of tribute paid to the quality of our sales networks. So what lessons can we draw today from this crisis, even if unfortunately it is very far from being over? The first lesson I would say is this issue that was caused, this issue with business interruption, that shows the major expectations that our citizens had with respect to insurance. Also, the necessity for us to better explain our business, and especially pooling, to understand that when a risk is systemic, so where it impacts everyone at the same time, well, private insurance alone cannot cover all of these risks. And this might be an obvious for us as insurers, but this is obvious information that needs to be explained to the public. And so obviously not during a time of crisis, but in the long term, this is part of the messages that we need to convey and that we need to explain. Just like the fact that we cannot reimburse premiums of those that don't have claims, simply because the premiums serve to indemnify their neighbors who did have a claim. So there are a few fundamentals that in France are not established and that need to be established. So the second lesson is that we showed a great deal of responsiveness. I will give you two examples, and then here again I will reference what some of the points that were raised by the panelists. So it's true that we as insurers,
c'était pas couvert dans les contrats, en tout cas, c'était pas couvert dans l'immense majorité des cas. C'était pas une situation confortable il y a un an de cela. Donc, en même temps qu'on mettait en place toutes ces aides pour nos assurés, en parallèle, on lançait un grand chantier collaboratif pour imaginer une solution qui permette pour une prochaine crise, donc on était, nous aussi, comme les assureurs américains, déjà en train de se projeter dans la prochaine crise ou catastrophe, pour imaginer une solution qui marcherait la prochaine fois. Alors cette solution, évidemment, ça peut pas être du ressort seulement de l'assurance privée, puisque on vient de se dire que c'était pas possible. Donc ce qu'on a imaginé, c'est un partenariat public-privé.
As a public-private partnership to the image of what exists in France with respect to natural catastrophes, and which makes it possible to, in the case of natural catastrophes, to pay compensation. We've put on the table of the Minister of Finance, the Prime Minister, a proposal for a PPP with a compulsory insurance that pools, well, the risk on all of the French companies, and that would make it possible in a lump manner to provide a very quick contribution in the case of the occurrence of a crisis, just like the one that we've had in the pandemics. In any case, a crisis that would trigger the administrative lockdown of companies, because this is what we are willing to cover, the economic consequences of the administrative lockdown of whole walks of the economy.
Il est robuste.
The process has the merit to exist. It is really a prudential process. For political reasons, it hasn't been actually retained or agreed upon by the French ruling parties and political parties and authorities. We're going to be working on it, but I don't think any what other kind of response could be provided, at least in the insurance world. What we did in parallel, as you know, our business is to really be forward looking. We always live in the future. We do insurance. So this is our core business. So we look ahead and think ahead. So the same way where we actually think about a coverage system for the COVID, for the crisis, post-crisis. So we were actually stepping in the post-crisis period, and we were thinking that our economy would dramatically need us for recovery. In other words, need the investment of the insurance companies. So as early as 30 May, we kicked off a very large investment program. So we're just coming out of the confinement. So we put like 2 billion euros on the table to fund the French and European companies with a focus on health, on tourism. And at this point, we have already started to fund very good and very flourishing enterprises from these sectors. So promising enterprises that are, of course, challenged by the current crisis, but do have great capacities to revive and reboot. So we do have that role to protect, but also to fund and finance the economy by investing the premiums of our insured. So by way of conclusion, I would say, yes, this crisis has been very hard. Yes, it was hard for us as insurance companies, but let's look at things positively, on a more positive note. This is what I want to do with you this evening? Well, simply because we have clearly shown our utility and how useful we could be. And we have shown our reactivity and capacity to look ahead and look and dive in the future. What really is a change from other policymakers and enterprises. And this crisis showed us how to be innovative. The fact of steering our companies for almost a year, almost entirely remotely, led us to scale up the digitalization process. And this is actually something that we have won so far for the future. This is a benefit. And we have imagined innovating financing solutions like PPPs to cover natural disasters or future disasters in the future. We hope that won't be that many, but let's be forward looking. And we have committed to engage in a very, very strong commitment on a very inclusive insurance. And the program of 2 billion euros called the Sustainable Recovery Program, it actually conditions the financing to the fact that enterprises that should benefit and enjoy from those funds, they need to have the social responsibility kind of mindset, the strategy. In other words, women, gender approach, youth, aging population. In other words, they really have to be environmentally and socially responsible. This is something that the insurance companies are very keen on. Now, another message that I want to launch, the public powers and authorities, what we did is launch that message to the public powers, urging them that for us to be able to do our business and our job as supporters of the economy, that they will allow us, or should allow us, to invest in the economy of the future and economy of tomorrow. And this is why the European standards of solvency are not always in line, or our policies, rather, are not always aligned with the EU standards, which led to the greening of our industry and our economy. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, dear Ma'am, Mrs. Florence Lusman. I just recalled that you're president of the French insurance company. Thank you for what you said, or you hardly said, and you said a lot, by the way. and I have tens of questions. I would have tens of questions to ask you, but unfortunately, we have little time left. But we're very happy to have you with us. But you reminded very well the responsibilities of the insurance companies, their risk and their roles, etc. So I hope that next time you will be consulted before an administrative decision that plans for the closing down of a whole economy. And I hope you will be talked to and consulted before these significant decisions are made. And you are definitely one of the insurance counselors and advisors. Thank you very much for having been with us. And thank you very much for having attended this very insightful and rich webinar. So I urge the participants to look at the bios of our keynote speakers and great panelists. And I would like to thank the scientific committee for the very incredible choice of our keynote speakers and panelists. And we'll meet tomorrow to talk about the insurance world in this world in motion. Thank you very, very much for your kind attention and wish you a very nice evening. Thank you.
Bienvenue dans le rendez-vous de Casablanca de l'assurance. Un format inédit, une approche collective et innovante, une scène internationale. Bienvenue dans un univers d'innovation et d'expertise autour des métiers de l'assurance.